Audiobook by Fate's Reader. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel for more epic series. Drop your recommended novel in comments below. We love to know what you want to hear next.
Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 171, Fox's Tale. There was only one requirement to the unity technique of great educational heavenly devil scriptures, which was to unite all the spells, divine arts, sword skills, and battle techniques in great educational heavenly devil scriptures, which included the 7 writings of creation. When one managed to do this, they could then be considered unified. When the previous cult masters received the teachings from the woodcutter on the rock, they would all have to comprehend their own unity technique, and only when they succeeded then could they secure their position of cult master. Otherwise, for sects like Heavenly Devil Cult, which didn't mind their cult master dying, changing the cult master would become a common thing. Those that could become Heavenly Devil Cult Master were all brimming over with talent. Therefore, every one of them could be considered talented figure. Even Cult Master Li, who was castigated for losing himself in female charms, was also an existence of great talent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to plant a heart devil in Granny C's Tao heart, which even strong practitioners like Village Chief Mute couldn't break. However, what made the 3 cult heavenly kings astonished was that the speed of Qin Mu comprehending unity technique was a little too fast. It had just been over 10 days and he had already touched the borders of unity technique, starting to harmonize his techniques and blend them together. What they didn't know was that Qin Mu's so-called overlord body had no vital chi's attribute and could turn into vital chi of any attribute at the same time. In addition to that, Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique also had no attributes and could also turn into any attribute. Qin Mu used Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique as a foundation, adding and taking away stuff on top of the foundation, running through the cult doctrine and philosophy of great educational heavenly devil cult and merging it with the marvel of the teachings on the rock, taking the first step to form his own unity technique. To act straightforwardly, to follow the course of nature. This sentence was brought out brilliantly by him. His unity technique may be using Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique as a foundation, but Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique had no branches or leaves. Therefore, the technique of great educational heavenly devil scriptures became its branches, while the spells, divine arts, sword skills, and battle techniques became its leaves. With the jade tree adorned, the technique was achieved and everything would let nature take its course. After a moment, Qin Mu slaughtered his way over to the cypress pine, and the 3 cult heavenly kings were extremely nervous, afraid that he might chop down this ancient tree which represented the sacred cult when they weren't paying attention. They didn't expect that Qin Mu didn't keep going to slash the cypress pine when he slaughtered his way to the tree. Instead, he sat down on Saint's Rock in the lotus position and calmed down. Vital chi curled around his body as his spirit embryo moved while his 5 stars shook. The 5 elements rose into the sky by themselves and landed on the 5 element stars. His eyes looked at his nose while his nose looked at his heart. His breath was like white light while the golden light was contained in his eyes as he sat there. Heavenly King Lu was about to say something when Heavenly King Shur immediately did a SHHH action and walked away quietly on tiptoe. Heavenly King Lu and Heavenly King Yu also sneaked away with light footsteps and followed him to leave quietly. The sacred cult master of this generation Shur is remarkable. Heavenly King Shur walked further and turned his head back to look at Qin Mu while sighing ruefully. Patriarch has a good judgment indeed. The future of our sacred cult would probably have to rely on him. Such talent and power of understanding are rare in this world. He still can't be compared to the saint of every 500 years. Heavenly King Yu sighed. An existence like eternal peace imperial preceptor can only be met once every 500 years. Heavenly King Lu looked at the mess throughout the entire mountain. Those were the trees that were knocked down when Qin Mu was sprinting with comprehending. Some of the collapsed trees were still crackling from being burned. Rare in the world naturally couldn't be compared to once every 500 years. After all, there can only be one every 500 years. This sacred cult master is good in everything, though it's just that he's too troublesome. This cult heavenly king sighed ruefully. Our Saint Arrival Mountain had only been destroyed into this state when Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery invaded us. Right? Don't talk about it anymore. He's the cult master patriarch chose after all. No matter how troublesome he is, we have to endure it. Let's go and put out the fire. Qin Mu sat on Saint's Rock for another half a day and was woken up by hunger. He called Hu Linger over to hunt a musk deer. They roasted the meat of the musk deer and had no more appetite after eating half of it. Young master got tired of it? The little fox picked her teeth in boredom and said, I saw a few fish dragons in fish observation pond which looked quite delicious and are pretty plump. I saw them too, and they were indeed appetizing. Qin Mu hesitated for a moment and said, I'm afraid I can't defeat those fish. However, Grandpa Apothecary had said, if I can't win, I can poison. Hu Linger cheered, and halfway through her cheer, the little fox immediately shut her mouth as she saw the three cult heavenly kings standing behind them with black faces. Qin Mu rose and smiled. How long have the heavenly kings been here? Just. Heavenly King sure wore a pleasant countenance. Sacred Cult Master can continue to eat slowly without rushing. That's right. The few fish dragons in Fish Observation Pond were reared by the 16th generation Cult Master. Back then, the 16th Cult Master gave lectures to the disciples by the pond and reared a few fish. By turning the fish into a dragon to give pieces of advice to the disciples, it led to becoming a deed that captured the imagination and had spread far and wide. Thus, these fish dragons had lived on. Sacred Cult Master can head over to the pond when you're free to do a head count in case the fish slips away. Qin Mu's face turned slightly red. These fish dragons couldn't be eaten? Cult Master, how does the musk deer taste? Heavenly King Lu asked with a smile. Sit down and eat together. Qin Mu invited them. The three cult heavenly kings were no modest as they took a seat each and split the musk deer's meat. Heavenly King Yu licked the grease on his fingers and smiled. Not a bad taste. If I had not known these musk deer were raised by the saintess of the previous generation, I would have long eaten them. They are raised by Granny C. Qin Mu's face turned black. What else could be eaten on this Saint Arrival Mountain? Heavenly King Lu seemed to blurt out accidentally. The forest which Cult Master destroyed was planted during the Founding Master's era. The sago palm grows slowly, and for them to be this thick, they have to grow for a few thousand years. Qin Mu felt agitated sitting down. That forest was completely destroyed by him, and there were only a few burned sago palms standing upright there. I have no idea who has plucked the sacred heart flower from the flower bed in Hall of Sacred Heart. Heavenly King Yu beamed. Qin Mu looked at Hu Linger, who was looking down at a musk deer's bone. Her furry tail, which would always sway around, was unusually calm. Heavenly King Sure said, There's also the green lamp in Floor of Natural Charm which contains sesame oil. Not sure who has drunk quite an amount if it. Hu Linger sensed Qin Mu's gaze staring at her own fox's tail and secretly hid her tail under her buttocks. Qin Mu coughed and said, Linger, your fox's tail is revealed. Where? The little fox cried out. I have clearly hidden it. Heavenly King Lu said neither too fast nor too slow. There's an ancient medicinal tree in front of the Hall of Medicine King, and a huge copper-colored 9-leaves lingji mushroom grew on it. The 9th leaf has almost been completely chewed away. That lingji mushroom is cultivated by the ancient medicinal tree and has a strong medicinal energy in it. There are also many spores in it, and the spores fly around in all directions. The spores would sprout from time to time, and small lingji mushrooms would pop out. On the little fox's head, a small lingji mushroom popped out, and she immediately raised her paws, pretending she was scratching her head, secretly plucking it down and sending it into her mouth. She thought everything was hush-hush, yet to her surprise, Qin Mu and the three cult heavenly kings were staring at her when she raised her eyes. Heavenly King Sure said, There are also a few cloud pearls that were embedded on the screen in Pavilion of Floating Clouds. They must have dropped off. Hu Linger became nervous and immediately hugged the little backpack on her back. Qin Mu gave 2 coughs and stood up. 3 heavenly kings. It's been a while since I came to Saint Arrival Mountain. Suddenly I remembered I'm still the Imperial Academician of Imperial College and did not attend many lessons. I plan to leave Saint Arrival Mountain today and return to the capital city. The 3 cult heavenly kings gave sighs of relief, and Heavenly King Sure said, By rights, we should keep Sacred Cult Master here to comprehend. But since Sacred Cult Master studies are more important, we won't be keeping you. Heavenly King Yu said courteously, Sacred Cult Master? Saint Arrival Mountain is Cult Master's home, so you must return home frequently. Don't treat yourself as an outsider. Definitely, definitely. Qin Mu replied courteously. As the sacred cult master, I would naturally come back to have a look frequently. Do you need us to send sacred cult master down the mountain? No need, no need. 3 heavenly kings. No need to see me out. Young master, you seem to be despised by the cult heavenly kings. Linger blinked her eyes innocently and said. Qin Mu stared at her, and the little fox secretly hid her fox's tail again. Qin Mu was speechless and shook his head. Even though you created troubles everywhere, those were small troubles. The troubles I created aren't less as well, and they were all bigger than yours, so I don't have the face to lecture you. This is probably the first time in Heavenly Saint Cult's history that the sacred cult master is being despised by his subordinates. Oh well, since I have pretty much comprehended unity technique, let us leave the mountain. Linger hurriedly nodded her head. Qin Mu tested a few more times and felt that he had mastered the technique of the teleportation clothing. Carrying Linger in his chest, he said, I'm still not confident of this teleportation. There are still some pills in my backpack, and in case my vital qi is depleted, I can still replenish it. Linger clung tightly to his chest and didn't dare to relax. Qin Mu leaped down from Saint Arrival Mountain, and the whooshing sound of wind brushed past his ears. With the youth's brocaded clothes covering and putting away, he had suffingly vanished in mid-air. The 3 cult heavenly kings immediately rushed to the bottom of the mountain and looked down, yet they couldn't see any traces of Qin Mu. Azura's blood eyes, awaken. Heavenly King Yu stretched out his index finger and touched the heart of his brows. Red lights burst forth from his 2 eyes as he looked downwards to search. After a moment, he found traces of Qin Mu and let out a sigh of relief. Sacred Cult Master is fine, and has already reached the borders of Heaven's Lightning Restricted Area, which revolves around our Saint Arrival Mountain. After he passes through this Heaven's Lightning Restricted Area, he would be safe. Heavenly King Lu's heart suddenly trembled, and he hurriedly asked, Senior brothers, have you told the Sacred Cult Master about Heaven's Lightning Restricted Area that's outside Saint Arrival Mountain? Heavenly King Yu and Heavenly King Shi looked at each other and both shook their heads. Heavenly King Shi mumbled, Junior Brother Lu has not told Sacred Cult Master about it? Heavenly King Lu shook his head. I thought you guys had said it. Crap. The expressions of the 3 cult heavenly kings changed hugely, and they immediately leaped down. Heaven's Lightning Restricted Area was laid down by a cult master of the previous generation to protect the sacred ground. From the outside, there was no peculiarity, but once inside, one would receive the bombardment of the blue sky's heaven's thunder. Don't mention Qin Mu. Even if it was a strong practitioner of celestial being realm, they would still die or become crippled when they landed inside. With Qin Mu's cultivation, he will definitely be turned into ashes in an instant. The speed of the 3 cult heavenly kings was extremely fast, and they came to Heaven's Lightning Restricted Area, barging into the restricted area to save them. Even with the dense cultivation of the 3 heavenly kings, they were still charred from the lightning strikes. That lightning region sure is dangerous. Outside Heaven's Lightning Restrict Area, Qin Mu looked towards the sky and had a lingering fear in his heart. Luckily, I had used Green Heaven's eyes to see this hidden lightning region and directly teleported out. There seemed to be people in the lightning region. He had no time to take a closer look as his body was already falling down from midair. Below him were the green mountains and blue waters of Eternal Peace Empire, which were covered by the clouds, looking very spectacular. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 172, Mound Prefecture's Insect Army. The 3 cult heavenly kings exhausted their strength to barge out of Heaven's Lightning Restricted Area, only to see Qin Mu's figure flickering repeatedly and becoming smaller as he went further and further away from them. The 3 of them let out sighs of relief. If I knew this mission was so hard, I would definitely not take it. Heavenly King Lu wiped the soot off his face and muttered, The sacred cult master of this generation is too unexpectable. The other 2 elders also had the same sentiments. Heavenly King Shi said, Luckily it has finally ended. For Sacred Cult Master to reveal his outstanding talent at such a young age is the fortune of our sacred cult. Now that this has ended, we should go investigate the matter regarding Heavenly King Qian. The hearts of Heavenly King Lu and Heavenly King Yu turned stern, and they replied with resolute expressions. That's precisely what we're going to do, to investigate the one that laid their hands on our sacred cult. Heavenly King Shur had a grave expression and said solemnly, "What I'm most worried about isn't this. It's whether the teleportation flag of our cult has been leaked out. A year of many troubles. Take a look below. It seems to be the borders of Mound Prefecture." Mound Prefecture? Our cult's sacred ground has traveled to the top of Mound Prefecture. Heavenly King Yu's heart trembled slightly and he let out a murky breath. Mound Prefecture has revolted and the Emperor's relatives have rebelled with quite a decent-sized power. Now that the sacred cult master has landed in Mound Prefecture, I'm afraid. Saint Arrival Mountain was hidden among heaven's lightning-restricted area and levitated high above the sky. This sacred ground wasn't stationary and was always moving. There was a place called Viewing Abyss and one could see the scenery below Saint Arrival Mountain when they looked down Viewing Abyss. Even the ants on the ground could be seen clearly. However, it was pretty rushed this time, therefore, they had no time to check Viewing Abyss and ended up letting Qin Mu out of the sacred ground when it was passing by Mound Prefecture. Hope the sacred cult master doesn't land in the battlefield, Heavenly King Lu muttered. Qin Mu fell from the sky and Hu Linger executed Demon Wind for Qin Mu to travel on the wind. Not long later, he had finally touched the ground. His vital qi had been exhausted by half, but at least he was considered safe and sound. It's been quite a long time since I've been to Imperial College. As the first Imperial academician and an official conferred by the Emperor, I had only listened to one lecture. Looking around, he let Hu Linger take out the geographic map of Eternal Peace Empire from his backpack. Looking at the topography of the mountains, he tried to find similar topography from the geographic map. It's Mound Prefecture. However, there's still quite a distance from the city. Right at this moment, he saw a ship floating by in the sky and Qin Mu's heart moved slightly. He immediately executed heaven-pilfering divine legs and ran after that ship along the foothills. That ship hung the flag of merchant, thus it was a ship that was dual-used for merchants and guests. Now, even with all the turmoil and chaos of war, there were still quite a number of merchant ships. There were still ships coming to and fro even in the areas of the armed rebellion. Qin Mu ran faster and faster until his feet suddenly stepped on the air. As he stepped on the air, he sprinted crazily through the sky as though it was flat land, catching up to the ship with just a few breaths' time and landing on the ship in a flash. Swang, swang, swang. The sounds of swords unsheathing traveled out as there were dozens of flying swords pointed at his neck just as he landed on the ship. The swords were everywhere in front and behind of his body. "Everyone, don't panic. I'm just trying to take the ship." Qin Mu raised both of his hands and said carefully. There were dozens of people on the deck of this ship and most of them looked like merchants. There were also divine arts practitioners hired by the merchants as well as a few officials. Those that had pointed the flying swords at his neck were those officials and divine arts practitioners. "Youth, where do you plan to go?" The coxswain, who was bare-armed and covered in tattoo, sized Qin Mu up and asked with an astonished expression. Qin Mu asked, "Is this the ship to the capital city?" The coxswain nodded his head and said, "To the capital city, the ship fare is 100 great abundance coins." Qin Mu was astonished and cried out, "So expensive? From River Tomb to the capital city was only 10 great abundance coins. How did it increase by 10 times in a blink of an eye? The circumstances aren't good now and there are wars every day. The journey isn't going to be smooth, so the ship fare would have to increase as well." 10 times is already little. We are literally putting our necks on the line now. Of course, you had to give more for our efforts. Qin Mu agreed. If he was to head to the capital city by himself and meet with turmoil and chaos on the journey, he would take over 10 days to reach the capital city. If he executed heaven-pilfering divine legs, he would require extremely dense cultivation and he would completely exhaust his cultivation after running for just a while. Therefore, it was still more convenient to take a ship. The world is not in peace. I've heard that Qiujie of Forest Prefecture has also rebelled. Qin Mu paid the ship fare and heard a few merchants discussing. An elderly mister said, "Qiujie is no small figure. Before relying on the imperial court, she was a great empress of Passion Parting Palace who had a world-shaking cultivation. Passion-Parting Palace had an enormous power, and there were many disciples from the palace who had become generals in the Borders army. Now that Passion-Parting Palace's great imperial empress has rebelled, the world is going to be even chaotic. I've heard Passion-Parting Palace was the #1 big sect created by a woman, having power that surpassed many others and wasn't much inferior to the 3 great sacred grounds. Most of the female generals in imperial court have come from Passion-Parting Palace. 3 Wonders Castle has also revolted. 3 Wonders Castle was well loved by the emperor back then, and Consort Che was from 3 Wonders Castle. I've heard she is the granddaughter of Che Zhengli, one of the 3 wonders. Now that 3 Wonders Castle has rebelled, Consort Che had been banished to the Cold Palace. Why have so many sects rebelled? Don't you know? 3 months ago, Daozi of Dao sect went to block Imperial College's gate, and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor went forward to give a lecture. After that, there were people who could see that Imperial Preceptor was injured. I've heard that Imperial Preceptor's wound has started to smell, and he purposely used perfume to cover it up, yet it still couldn't cover up the stink of the wound. When the news was spread out, many sects still couldn't believe it. Then another story came out. Dragon Rider Sect Master had visited Imperial Preceptor's manor late at night to fight with Imperial Preceptor and actually made it out alive. Dragon Rider Sect Master's ability can't be considered top-notch, but he had raised a dragon which was transformed from a snake, barely considering him an expert of the Sect Master level. For Imperial Preceptor to not take even him down, it shows how serious his injuries are. Shoo! Stop talking about it. Those few officials are looking over. Qin Mu's heart moved slightly as he thought back to the time where Imperial Preceptor was giving a lecture. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor did look a little frail, but Qin Mu was proficient in the art of healing, and by buying rouge and powder frequently with Granny C, he could confirm that the flush on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's face wasn't from being sick and was from applying rouge. As for using perfume to cover the rotting smell of the wound, from what these merchants had said, Qin Mu had indeed smelled 2 different kinds of smell back then, but he wasn't concerned at all. Learning how to distinguish herbs from apothecary since he was young, these 2 smells were from ordinary herbs and perfume. Qin Mu frowned. Imperial Preceptor's injuries had already healed, yet he still borrowed the chance to let the people of the outside world know that he was still gravely injured when he had come to Imperial College for a lecture, making the people who were thinking rebelling but didn't dare to rebel. Isn't this scheme a little too terrifying? It had been 3 months since Imperial Preceptor gave a lecture in Imperial College, and in this 3 months, the situation had gotten even messier. There were sects revolting and officials rebelling everywhere, making Qin Mu feel that he wasn't understanding Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor more and more. Imperial Preceptor had thrown the current political situation into such a disorder and had already become such a hard-to-fix extent. Even if he was able to quell the rebellion, the strength of Eternal Peace Empire would still be greatly damaged. Furthermore, Eternal Peace Empire also had other enemies like Barbarian D Empire of the Western Borders and Wolf Store Country of the Northern Borders, being in a mess both domestically and abroad. Could Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor think of seizing the throne? He revealed an expression of doubt. With the Imperial family fighting with the rebels, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor could take this chance to seize the throne and make himself the emperor when both sides suffered from their battles. However, even though Qin Mu didn't know Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor well, he felt a person with such a breadth of mind wouldn't use such a method to seize the throne. Suddenly the ship began to tremble violently, and Qin Mu's heart leaped. He hurriedly leaned to the side of the ship to take a look and saw this ship sailing into a battlefield. This battlefield was in the air, and other than the warships, there were still flying cars, flying clouds, flying mounts, and all kinds of weird flying treasures or mounts. Luckily, their ship was located at the borders of the battlefield, and when the coxswain saw things were looking back, he immediately steered hard left and the ship almost tilted over. The ship barely avoided a warship and slid past the battlefield. Qin Mu stabilized himself and prevented himself from falling over. Suddenly, a cavalry controlled a golden wings birds and flew over. From afar, he could see swords flying out into the sky from the sword cases and swept towards the people on the ship. The coxswain immediately shouted, "We are merchants passing by and not soldiers." The cavalry turned a deaf ear and the sharp swords shot towards the people on the deck. There were also a few swords slicing towards the sails, cutting away the ropes and instantly slowing the ship down hugely. Everyone on the ship felt their scalps turning numb. This was a standard battle between armies, and it was evident that one side was Eternal Peace Empire's army, which was pacifying the rebellion, while the other side was the rebel army. This wasn't simply just a sect creating havoc. When a sect created havoc, other than large-scale sects like the Three Sacred Grounds, it was hard for the other sects to bring out the strength that could rival the Empire's army. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's reform had not only reformed primary schools, colleges, and Imperial College, he had similarly reformed the military arms. In the army, the soldiers all had standardized spirit weapons, and even if they weren't opponents of the sect's disciples, as long as their numbers were greater and could manipulate sword using Qi, all of the soldiers could work hand in hand and release 10,000 swords simultaneously, creating an astonishing power. Other than the army working together, there were also land and sky combination, spells combining with all kinds of fighting method. 10 soldiers of 5 elements realm could easily kill a 6 directions divine arts practitioner by working together. All the famous sects in the martial world had no power to fight back when they encountered the encirclement and annihilation of the imperial family. Using this kind of fighting method from the army, there were still quite a great numbers of sects being eliminated like this in the history of Eternal Peace Empire annexing other countries. On the ship, Qin Mu stabilized his mind and was about to use his sword case when he suddenly remembered the flying swords in his sword case had all been destroyed in Roland's Golden Palace. Therefore, he had thrown his sword case away. Use Junior Protector Sword. Qin Mu avoided the flying swords that were stabbing over, and his vital qi went into Tao Tai Sac and a crisp hum sounded out. With a gentle rotation with wave sword form, the flying swords that came flying over were all sliced into halves by him. The bodies of the swords landed on the ship and only the handles were left. With his proficient sword skills plus the sharpness of Junior Protector Sword, it could be said that there was no disadvantage for him. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and suddenly saw the cloth sack of those soldiers who were on the back of the golden wings birds opening up. Buzzing sounds instantly traveled over and countless of golden insects flew out from the cloth sack. It's the insect army. The other guests on the ship had a huge change in expression and cried out, "The insect army of Three Wonders Castle!" The few soldiers stretched out their hands and countless of flying insects grouped up and rushed towards the ship like venomous dragons, biting and tunneling into everyone they saw. Not far from Qin Mu, there was a big-bellied merchant whose cultivation wasn't weak, but he got infiltrated by the insects which tunneled into his eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. In the next moment, the entire fat merchant deflated like a balloon and only a piece of human skin laid on the deck. Under the human skin, countless of insects squirmed around and crawled out from his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose before flapping their wings to fly away. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 173. I've turned good. Everyone on the ship was overwhelmed. That coxswain was a divine arts practitioner with extraordinary abilities, but as he had to control the direction of the ship, he couldn't care for everyone. Three Wonders Castle had 3 wonders, the first being bugs, the second being medicine, and the third was beautiful women. Consort Che in the royal palace was an outstanding beauty from Three Wonders Castle. Three Wonders Castle was proficient in their medical expertise, having many famous physicians that were good at using venomous insects to treat illness. Meanwhile, the first wonder among the 3 was insect. The insect army of Three Wonders Castle was extremely terrifying. The people that were good at healing were also good at poisoning. The venomous insects of Three Wonders Castle were also a unique skill. After they were annexed by the imperial court, the emperor had ordered Three Wonders Castle to form an insect army, and most of the soldiers in the army were experts in controlling insects. Now that Three Wonders Castle had rebelled, it was evident that the insect army had already rebelled, and this battle was between the imperial army and the insect army of Three Wonders Castle. They had wandered carelessly into the battlefield and came under attack from Three Wonders Castle's insect army. Things were not going to end peacefully. It's impossible to guard against this kind of insects. Junior Protector Sword can't deal with so many insects. Qin Mu's scalp turned numb as countless of golden insects flew towards him. He immediately split his focus into 2 and brandished his Junior Protector Sword at one soldier while bursting forth his vital qi in his body. Countless of fine vital chi threads surged out from his hand to form something like a blazing red sun. His vital chi threads were formed from incomparably fine vital chi swords which transformed into a setting sun in this instant, floating in the air with a buzz. Yuyuan Imperial Studies Sunset Sword Skill. That fireball spun rapidly and countless of sword lights instantly burst forth from this setting sun. Each and every sword stabbed the bodies of the small golden insects, and in an instant, insects' corpses filled the ground around Qin Mu. At the same time, his junior protector penetrated through the chest of a soldier in a flash before returned with a stab to finish off the soldier. Superb sword skill. That coxswain praised and let his assistant control the ship. He immediately made a move and took out a fire bottle gourd. After he opened the bottle gourd, a piece of fire cloud flew out from the bottle gourd and transformed into a 9-head fire phoenix, which opened its 9 mouths to spew out raging inferno that scorched countless of bugs to death. That 9-head fire phoenix spread its wings and shrouded the ship while spewing out trails of flames. Before the soldiers of Three Wonders Castle could even get close, they were burned into charcoal. This coxswain has a very deep cultivation, which is not inferior to little General Qin Feiyue. Qin Mu's heart moved slightly. The coxswain was a middle-aged man with a burly body. However, this flame divine art that he had unleashed was indeed extraordinary. He was probably a divine arts practitioner of 7 Stars realm. Right at this moment, the terrifying golden insects swarmed over like waves. A woman wearing a military uniform stood among them. With a point of her finger, the swarm of insects surged forth towards the ship. The second wonder of Three Wonders Castle. The girls sure are pretty. That coxswain gave a chuckle, and the 9-head fire phoenix came back into the fire bottle gourd with a whoosh. The bottle gourd grew larger and larger, turning into a huge object that was about 3 to 5 humans tall. With the mouth of the bottle gourd facing downwards, a terrifying suction came from it and sucked in the swarm of insects which were surging over. That coxswain held madras with both of his hands and slapped dozens of madras one after another on the fire bottle gourd. All kinds of elegant runes instantly appeared in the air around the huge fire bottle gourd one after another before vanishing gradually. The swarm of insects was instantly turned into ashes in the bottle gourd. Qin Mu's eyes lighted up. Cultivation was to study, and this coxswain seemed to have quite an in-depth knowledge regarding runes and madra. That female general of Three Wonders Castle was shocked, and the swarm of insects under her feet instantly stopped. Standing in the air, she blinked her beautiful eyes and said, "You are Fire Bandit Fan Yunxiao? When have you turned good and become a coxswain?" The expression on most of the merchants on ship changed, and even those few officials changed their expression hugely. They all manipulated swords using chi to point them at the coxswain. That coxswain spat twice. "What do you mean, turned good?" The female general of Three Wonders Castle sneered. "I've heard you were a relinquished disciple of Dao sect. Dao sect disliked you having improper intentions and chased you out from Dao sect. Thus you became a bandit to plunder merchants everywhere. You have been wanted by the imperial court for quite a while. Now that you have become a coxswain, haven't you turned good?" That coxswain Fan Yunxiao laughed. "I only work as a bandit during times of peace to rob people of their valuables. How can I be a bandit in these times of unrest? During times of unrest, more money comes from being a coxswain than robbing people. General, please make life easy for me." The female general snorted coldly and looked around. The insect army of Three Wonders Castle was still fighting, and it wasn't good for her to engage in a fight with this bandit now. Even though Fan Yunxiao was a relinquished disciple of Dao sect, he had extremely high abilities. Even the imperial court could not catch him in so many years, so she might not be his opponent. Her insect cloud swept backward at once, and she floated away. Fan Yunxiao let out a sigh of relief and ordered his assistant to drive the ship away. The merchants on the ship looked at this burly man with eyes filled with terror. Fan Yunxiao immediately said, "Relax everyone. I've turned good and won't rob during times of unrest. The officials can also be at ease. I've turned good. This ship is even recorded in the capital city." An official sneered. Could this ship of Coxswain Fan be the infamous cloud-chasing pirate ship among the bandits? "Please excuse my humble ship. Cloud-chasing pirate ship has also changed its name to cloud-chasing passenger ship. When the world is peaceful again, we'll then go back to rob. Fan Yunxiao went to the merchant who had been eaten until only his skin was left and frowned. You have boarded my ship and I should have protected you with everything I could, yet you still met with trouble. I can't take your ship fare. After he said this, he took out a coin pouch and handed it to the merchant's associate. Everyone on the ship was trembling with fear and felt that they had just escaped from a pack of wolves only to enter the tiger's den. This Fan Yunxiao had created trouble for merchant ships for many years, plundering people everywhere. Now that they were on his ship, everything pointed to disaster. I've turned good. Fan Yunxiao bowed with his hands held in front. I've really turned good. Don't worry. I'll definitely send you guys to the capital city. Everyone still had a face of terror. Fan Yunxiao was helpless and looked at Qin Mu while smiling. Little brother's sword skill ain't half bad. You're from Yuan family? Qin Mu shook his head and replied, Imperial College's Qin Mu. Senior brother Fan has great knowledge, which I admire. Fan Yunxiao's eyes lighted up and smiled. This is the first time someone praised my knowledge. Your judgment ain't bad. What's funny is that everyone is so caught up in cultivating and don't study. What they don't know is, cultivation is studying. Dao Sec's ultimate arts were all derived from studying. Without knowledge, you can't even learn shit. Qin Mu had the same sentiments. If one wanted to learn the teleportation divine art, an extremely high knowledge was also needed. Dao Sword of Dao Sect also required knowledge, and just now Fan Yunxiao's Medra also contained transformation of runes which couldn't be achieved without profound knowledge. If you didn't go Imperial College and went Dao Sect instead, Dao Master, that old man would definitely like you very much. Fan Yunxiao recalled the past and said dimly, I don't even know which eye of that old man saw me having improper intentions. I was clearly very well behaved in Dao Sect. Qin Mu gave a cough and asked, Did senior brother Fan become a bandit after you got chased out? Fan Yunxiao clapped heavily and exclaimed, The old man is still the wiser one. He had seen that I would become a bandit in the future. Therefore, he had chased me out to let me become a bandit. However, I was still very well behaved in Dao Sect. How did he see it? Qin Mu was speechless. He suddenly remembered something and asked, Senior brother Fan, how's your algebra? Fan Yunxiao became disappointed and said, I was originally very good at it, but after being a bandit for all these years, I have returned them all to Dao Master. The computational canon of Mysterious Woman and computational canon of Supreme Mystery in Dao Sect are all very profound and not easy to learn. If one could learn all of them, they could learn 14 writings of Dao Sect. I had originally cultivated it. Suddenly a head popped out under the hold of the ship and shouted, Robber Baron, our furnace seems to be faulty. Just now, the woman from Three Wonders Castle stuffed a few insects into our pill furnace when we were unprepared and they gnawed the pill furnace. How many times have I told you? Stop calling me Robber Baron. I've turned good. Fan Yunxiao scratched his head and looked around. Everyone who knows how to forge tools and repair the pill furnace? At this moment, a dull boom sounded from the hold of the ship. A few apothecaries climbed out from the hold of the ship and said with black faces, The pill furnace has exploded. Fan Yunxiao's expression changed hugely and cursed, Damned woman, sneaking such a ruthless attack. Let's abandon the ship. Everyone, jump down together. Qin Mu came forward and said, I know how to forge tools and also learned the path of medicine. Let me have a look first. Fan Yunxiao was skeptical and followed him to the hold of the ship. The hold of the ship was already in flames and a few fierce-looking bandits were extinguishing the fire, minimizing the intensity of the fire. However, without the pill furnace providing medicinal energy to the ship, the speed had already started to slow down and the ship could fall off from the sky anytime. Qin Mu went forward and looked at the shattered pill furnace. This kind of furnace was the standardized pill furnace and was different from ordinary pill furnace. There was a shipyard in Eternal Peace Empire where countless of ironworkers worked day and night to forge pill furnaces which could be used on the ship, providing motive power to the ship. This kind of pill furnace burned spirit stones and dozens of herbs, transforming the medicinal energy contained in the spirit stones and herbs into surging energy which was transported to the bronze beasts located at the aft of the ship. The energy was then turned into raging flames which spewed out from the mouth of the bronze beasts, allowing the ship to rise. The structure of the pill furnace was extremely complicated and was a unique treasure that the skilled blacksmith of Imperial College had created. Other than refining pills, there was also a complicated digestive system in the furnace which was similar to a human body, turning the medicinal energy into energy. When these pill furnaces were spoilt normally, they could only find the blacksmith of the shipyard in Eternal Peace Empire to repair them or to change new ones. Can it be repaired? Fan Yunxiao asked anxiously. Qin Mu checked the structure of the pill furnace and had a rough understanding of it. I had learned to smith in the past for a few years. I can forge a new one in an incense stick of time. How long can this ship last? If we use our magic power to sustain it, we can still last for an incense stick of time. Qin Mu immediately started to reforge the pill furnace. With vermilion bird vital qi in one hand and with black tortoise vital qi in the other, he swept up countless fragments of the pill furnace and smelted them into molten iron. Using black tortoise vital qi in the other hand, he quickly cooled the iron down and constructed the components of the pill furnace rapidly. Everyone was dazzled by the sight, and the ship suddenly jerked and began to descend. Fan Yunxiao couldn't care about looking at how Qin Mu forged the pill furnace and hurriedly rushed out of the hole to activate his fire bottle gourd, transforming it into a 9-headed phoenix to lift up the ship. Even though he was a strong practitioner of Seven Stars realm and had dense magic power, it was still extremely tough for him to carry the ship to fly. As the time ticked by, Fan Yunxiao's face grew red as the pressure on him increased. It was harder and harder for him to persevere, and everyone on the ship was extremely terrified. If Fan Yunxiao couldn't persevere on, this ship would probably fall from a height of 10,000 feet, breaking them into pieces. Fan Yunxiao had already reached his limit and couldn't persevere any longer. Suddenly, the two bronze beasts at the aft of the ship spewed fire from their mouths, and the flames grew exponentially. The ship trembled violently and its speed increased as it flew forward. Fan Yunxiao let out a sigh of relief and took his 9-headed phoenix back. However, he saw the speed of the ship becoming faster and faster as everything went by in a blur. The speed of the ship was 3 to 5 times faster than before. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 174. Adopt. The little fox in Qin Mu's backpack couldn't resist popping her head out to say, "This senior brother Fan, didn't you ever think that you would run a few more trips ferrying passengers to earn more money since your ship is 3 to 5 times faster now? There is no need for you to rob." Fan Yunxiao rolled his eyes at Hu Linger. "Why so troublesome? Now that my ship is fast enough, I would be able to rob fast enough. I could only rob once a day before, now I can rob 3 to 5 times a day. The money from robbing is so much more than ferrying passengers. During times of peace, there are more merchant ships, therefore we need to rob during times of peace. Now that there's war, there are lesser merchant ships, therefore we're ferrying passengers. Little fox demon, you don't have the brains for business." Hu Linger was completely speechless. The speed of the ship was too fast, and the ship was already giving off creaking sounds. It was getting harder for the ship to bear the wind pressure caused from flying forward. Fan Yunxiao became nervous again and fortified the ship with a few bandits by using runes transformed by vital qi to mark the hull of the ship. Qin Mu's heart was alarmed. Now he was also afraid that this ship would crumble into pieces any moment. Luckily, on the way there, the ship never broke down in midair. On their way there, they encountered a few more battlefields, but because the speed of cloud-chasing pirate ship was too fast, before the two sides could even see what it was, the ship had already flown past, inevitably making them indescribably stunned. Fan Yunxiao was also indescribably stunned. The pill furnace created by Qin Mu was simply too strong, and according to this flying speed, the 7 to 8 days journey to the capital city now would just take them over a day. However, even though the pill furnace Qin Mu created was good, it consumed much more spirit stones and herbs. When they reached the capital city, it was already the morning of the next day. The ship slowed down its speed, and the spirit stones on the ship were more or less depleted. The ship gradually descended and landed in the vehicles and mounts market in the capital city. The official in the vehicles and mounts market went forward to check, and his expression immediately changed hugely when he saw Fan Yunxiao. He was about to call for constables to arrest him when Fan Yunxiao immediately explained, "I've turned good. Turned good. This is our ship's official record. That official took a look, and it was really an official record from the imperial court. He said bewilderedly. Crooks like you should be beheaded. How could they allow you turn good? Fan Yunxiao laughed dryly. This is the grace of the imperial court. I'm moved to tears of gratitude. Qin Mu disembarked the ship and was about to leave when Fan Yunxiao hurried over. Putting his arm over his shoulder, he chuckled. Brother Qin, what future do you have in Imperial College? Why not follow me and we can do big business? No capital, huge profit. Qin Mu shook his head. Senior brother Fan, I in Imperial College ain't like you in Dao sect. You are corrupted at heart, but Imperial College has a very good impression of me. I'm a good person with an extensive public reputation. Hu Linger was full of confidence. The term improper intention can never be placed together with young master. Fan Yunxiao could only drop his thoughts and grumbled. With your talent, it's wasted for you not to be a bandit. That's right, when I left Dao sect, I stole a computational canon of supreme mystery, and since you're interested in algebra, I'll give it to you. Qin Mu rose up with spirit and immediately took over the computational canon of supreme mystery. How can I take such a precious gift? Linger, take it quickly. Hu Linger hid the computational canon of supreme mystery in the backpack. Fan Yunxiao said, Dao sect doesn't prohibit disciples to learn computational canon of supreme mystery. This canon is used for opening up the disciples' wisdom, and if they could learn the computational canons well, only then can they learn 14 writings of Dao Sword. Back then I learned my computational canon not bad and learned the 5th writing of Dao Sword. Before I could start to learn the 6th writing, I was chased out to become a bandit. Qin Mu asked curiously, which writing is the move, a dot threading the vast movements, yin and yang come and go within 2 modes from? Brother Qin knows this move? Fan Yunxiao was astonished. This is the 1st writing of Dao Sword and the most simple move among the 14 writings. Dao Sword becomes harder the further you cultivate it, but the power also grows. When one succeeds in cultivating the 14th writing of Dao Sword, he would become invincible in this world, becoming a god. However, no one in Dao sect has ever succeeded. Qin Mu's heart jumped. The 1st writing of Dao Sword was already this powerful, so how astonishing could the power of the 14th writing be? When he fought with Daozi Ling Xian, this was the move that was used by Daozi Ling Xian. He defeated Daozi Ling Xian. However, Daozi Ling Xian also managed to calculate the location of his weakness and injured him. He couldn't help becoming curious about the 14 writings of Dao Sword. After bidding farewell to Fan Yunxiao, Qin Mu walked towards Imperial College and thought to himself, Fan Yunxiao is an interesting person. I'm just not sure when such an interesting person would be detained to the market to be beheaded. Now that Patriarch has retired, I wonder who would be the next Grand Chancellor? Could it be Chancellor Ba Shan? Chancellor Ba Shan planned to change the disadvantage of Imperial College by establishing Imperial Academicians. In Qin Mu's heart, he was the first choice to be the next Grand Chancellor. However, the other people might not be as open-minded as him. It was extremely important for them to establish Imperial Academicians. It was the crucial point if Imperial College would be able to surpass sacred grounds like Dao Sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery. Only when Chancellor Ba Shan became the Grand Chancellor could he continue to push for this reform. He came to the mountain gate of Imperial College, and just as he passed the mountain gate, he suddenly moved back and sized up the dragon Qilin who was guarding in front of the mountain gate. That dragon Qilin was still lying below the mountain gate and looking forward motionless. However, the chains on his neck had disappeared. Qin Mu took a few more looks, and the dragon Qilin continued to look forward without blinking at all. He looked like he was carved from stone, but veins started popping out from the neck of this dragon Qilin. What are you looking at? The dragon Qilin turned his head and roared at him in anger. Qin Mu asked curiously, The chain on your neck is gone, so why aren't you leaving? What are you staying here for? That dragon Qilin replied weakly, I've nowhere to go. Every day there are people feeding me here, so why should I go? I'm pretty comfortable here. Hu Linger smiled. Big fella, are eating and drinking all you seek after? The dragon Qilin gave her a glance and felt quite a disdain. How does a fox demon know the ambition of a Qilin? You also won't understand if I told you. Hu Linger smiled to Qin Mu. Young master, this dragon Qilin has turned dumb squatting here every day. Let's not bother ourselves with him. Qin Mu was about to walk up the mountain when the dragon Qilin drooped his head down with a dazed look. My old master has retired and escaped with an old man, abandoning me behind. I have nowhere else to go, so I could only stay here to guard the gate. I still have to be bullied by a bull every day, and now even a fox is scorning me. There's no way to live on. Qin Mu walked back 2 steps and came to the front of the dragon Qilin and asked, Your patriarch's mount? We're from the same sect. I'm the cult master of the sacred cult. The dragon Qilin looked at him with vigilance and sneered. I don't know any patriarch or any cult master. I still haven't settled my scores with you for paralyzing me. Qin Mu smiled. When I've come to fight Daozi of Dao sect, didn't you see me walking over with patriarch? You should have known my relationship with patriarch. There's no need for you to be wary. The dragon Qilin snorted coldly. Then you paralyzed me. Qin Mu mumbled. That's the result of your asking me to beat that bull. I even got beaten up by that bull instead. You absolutely didn't tell me that the bull was so strong. It's better to squash enmity rather than keeping it alive. The dragon Qilin then snorted coldly again. Then you took revenge by paralyzing me. Qin Mu probed. How about I get that bull over and you beat him up? The dragon Qilin didn't trust him obviously and said, You still want to paralyze me? Qin Mu was helpless and could only go up the mountain. This dragon Qilin was a little thick-headed and only remembered that he had paralyzed him. Suddenly, he stopped and looked back, only to see that dragon Qilin finally leaving his spot while following behind him step for step. When he saw him stop, that dragon Qilin also stopped. Qin Mu walked forward and that dragon Qilin also walked forward. Qin Mu stopped in before the jade cliff and looked back. That dragon Qilin also stopped with him. Qin Mu leaped up the jade cliff while fire clouds spawned under the dragon Qilin's feet, carrying his large body up the cliff. Qin Mu turned back and smiled. What are you following me for? I had only paralyzed you once and took some dragon saliva. Is there a need for such a deep hatred? You paralyzed me, so you have to provide my meals, the dragon Qilin said seriously. Qin Mu was bewildered and asked, Didn't you say earlier that people bring you food every day? You can just stay at the mountain gate. The dragon Qilin lowered his head. It was also Old Master bringing meals for me in the past, and after Old Master left, no one cares about me anymore. I have not eaten for over a month. The new Grand Chancellor thinks I am a rock, and the other directorates also think I am a rock. I'm also ashamed to beg for food. I can't bring myself to do it. That bull even relied on Chancellor Ba Shan as his backing to bully me, saying that I cheated his feelings. Qin Mu saw his grieving appearance, which moved his empathetic heart. All right, don't feel so wrong. You can follow me from now on and I'll take care of your meals. I have the money. What do you eat? I only drink the water of Jade Dragon Lake and eat 1 bucket of Scarlet Fire Spirit pills every day. Qin Mu clenched his fists tightly, and Hu Linger also felt her liver trembling. Jade Dragon Lake was the lake formed from the gathering of the Qi of the 9 dragons. There was a lot of water in the lake, and this dragon Qilin could drink to his heart's content. But a bucket of Scarlet Fire Spirit pills was the killer. Young master, the little money we have is only enough to feed him for half a month. Hu Linger whispered. I think it's best not to shelter him, or else that little property of ours would be emptied by him. The dragon Qilin heard it and immediately said, I can starve myself a little and eat half a bucket every day. No? Then a liter? No lesser than 1 liter. Qin Mu shook his hand and said, I'm an apothecary myself, and I can refine Scarlet Fire Spirit pills myself to save some money. You won't lose out in your meals. However, I can't raise you for free. The dragon Qilin immediately cried out, You paralyzed me. Furthermore, we are from the same sect. You're the cult master, so you have the duty to raise me. I'm the mount of your patriarch. Qin Mu's head started to ache as he said, You have to give me some of your dragon saliva every day, or else I won't be able to raise you. Dragon's saliva? The dragon Qilin turned wary. Qin Mu explained, Dragon saliva means your saliva. The dragon Qilin had obviously thought of something wrong as he let out a sigh of relief. That's good then. That's right, you had said earlier that you could bring the bull over to let me beat him up. Qin Mu warned, don't win an inch and want a foot, otherwise, I will only give you half a bucket of scarlet fire spirit pills every day. The dragon Qilin immediately shut up and followed behind him, as if he was afraid to lose this meal master. Hu Linger kept looking back to size up this large creature, and this fellow was even much higher than Qin Mu when he stood up. Qin Mu just barely reached the dragon's whiskers that were drooping down his chin. Adding the long Qilin's tail of the dragon Qilin to calculation, he was probably 40 to 50 feet long. This dragon Qilin had strange decorative designs protruding out over his body, which looked like natural runes, giving off an awe-inspiring presence. No wonder he can eat so much. He's much bigger than Bull too. Not sure how big he will be when he reveals his true form. Hu Linger was secretly astonished. Qin Mu brought the dragon Qilin up the mountain and came to Jade Dragon Lake to let this dragon Qilin drink water first. He thought to himself, I still don't know how much a small bottle of dragon saliva is worth. However, it's a spirit medicine for healing injuries, so it shouldn't be cheap, right? I hope it can fetch enough to cover the cost of the herbs. Otherwise, my whole fortune is going to be eaten up. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 175. Mutual Aid of Battle Techniques and Spell. The dragon Qilin drank the water and looked towards Qin Mu. I'm still a little hungry. I'll bring you to refine pills. Qin Mu brought this dragon Qilin to the warehouse, planning to buy some herbs to refine scarlet fire spirit pills. Meanwhile, there was a Taoist opposite Jade Dragon Lake who was looking over here. As he saw Qin Mu bring the dragon Qilin away, he muttered, This dragon lion in front of the mountain gate has come alive? Why did it come to Jade Dragon Palace for a drink? Who is that youth? Doesn't he know the water of Jade Dragon Palace is to be offered to the royal family? Oh well, as long as they don't wash in the lake, there's no need to bother with a few drinks. Qin Mu passed by Royalty's Park and saw many scholars surrounding there as cheers sounded out. Qin Mu gave a look from afar, and even the scholars from Scholars' Residence were also running over. There were also some divine arts practitioners of Divine Arts Residence, crowding Royalty's Park so much that it was impenetrable. Suddenly, a loud boom sounded out as a figure got blown into the air with his head crashing downwards. A voice cried out, Another one is defeated. Qin Mu jumped in shock. The one who got his head stuck in the ground was a prince of Royalty's Park. A prince was a king's son. Who was the one who dared to be so merciless? I'm here to experience it. A girl's voice came from the crowd while Qin Mu had already walked further away. He suddenly heard another loud boom, and a girl in green flew backward and crashed into the walls of Hall of Hidden Light, which was not far from him. Only a pair of slender legs were left outside. Seems to be a princess. Qin Mu looked back at the crowd and thought to himself, These moves are a little familiar. Seem to be Chancellor Ba Shan's battle spells. Chancellor Ba Shan founded the ultimate skills of battle spells and merged battle techniques moves with spell divine arts, resulting in a power that was greater than battle techniques or spells by themselves. This feat of founding had allowed Chancellor Ba Shan to be part of the circle of strong practitioners of the sect master level. In this current world, there was no one who could surpass his attainments in ultimate skills of battle spells. The only weakness of battle spell ultimate skills was that it wasn't as flexible as battle techniques or spells by itself. This was why, even though Chancellor Ba Shan had become a strong practitioner of the sect master level, he was unable to take another step forward. Could it be Sister Yushio? Why is she fighting with the princes and princesses? The dragon Qilin was so hungry that his steps were shaky and his belly had shriveled up. Qin Mu suppressed his urge to go watch the battle and continued on to the warehouse to buy the herbs. After the apothecary of the warehouse had handed him the herbs, only then did he see the huge creature behind Qin Mu's back and was stunned. Qin Mu brought the dragon Qilin back on the road they came from and analyzed the medicinal energy of the herbs on their way back, refining out a furnace of scarlet fire spirit pills. The dragon Qilin hurriedly ate it and still wasn't full from a furnace of spirit pills. Looking at Qin Mu pleadingly, Qin Mu could only refine another furnace of pills to finally satisfy the huge creature's appetite. The dragon Qilin was enlivened and followed beside him with a smile. From now on, you can find me for anything. I'm pretty good at fighting. Qin Mu shook his head and walked towards Royalties Park. Hu Linger sneered. You don't even dare to fight a bull and still say you're good at fighting? The dragon Qilin instantly became downcast. Royalties Park still had a vast crowd in front of it, and there were even more people. He heard a scholar said, Is there still no one in Royalties Park that could defeat her? Ever since the seventh princess has come back from experiencing the outside world, she seems like a changed person. Her abilities have improved rapidly. Merging spells and battle techniques together, on top of that, the 9-dragon monarch technique of the royal family, the seventh princess could basically sweep the entire Royalties Park. I wonder if she can block the gate of Scholar's Residence and Divine Arts Residence. I can't say for Divine Arts Residence, but she probably can't do it for Scholar's Residence. After all, there's that devil in Scholar's Residence. That's true. It's been 3 months since we saw that devil. He must have died outside, eliminating a huge scourge in Scholar's Residence at last. With that devil's abilities, it doesn't mean he can defeat the seventh princess. Out of the way, everyone out of the way. Most of the scholars felt a disturbance coming from the back and looked behind. They couldn't help being stunned when they saw a huge creature that was half dragon, half Qilin nudging his body and pushing the scholars who were blocking the road to one side. There were some scholars that lost their footing when they got pushed by this dragon Qilin, flying out from the crowd. This huge creature pushed everyone away and squeezed his way towards the gate of Royalties Park, clearing a path. All the scholars were stunned from the sight and subconsciously felt terrified. Even the royalties in Royalties Park who were more knowledgeable couldn't help staring at this awe-inspiring dragon Qilin, unable to move their gazes away. The dragon Qilin swayed his body and shook his hair, turning his head to smile. Young master, these visually impaired have already cleared a path for you. Young master, this way. Qin Mu walked to the gate of Royalties Park and reproached, Too flamboyant. Too flamboyant. You can't do this next time. Senior brothers, senior sisters, excuse me. Excuse me. Everyone had their expression frozen on their faces. Qin Mu looked towards Royalties Park and saw Ling Yuxiu sealing her 5 elements divine treasure as she fought with Prince Mingyue. Prince Mingyue was also another scholar that Chancellor Ba Shan had chosen, and with just a few moves, Prince Mingyue couldn't withstand that astonishing explosive power from Ling Yuxiu and got blown away. Ling Yuxiu burst her 5 elements divine treasure open and 9 dragons coiled around her body, looking really valiant and formidable looking as she glowed with health and vigor. Qin Mu exclaimed to himself. After Ling Yuxiu had experienced the journey to Roland's Golden Palace, her cultivation increased by leaps and bounds. These 3 months made her hold an overwhelming advantage against the other scholars. It was evident that she cultivated diligently after she had blocked the gate at Roland's Golden Palace, cultivating 9 Dragons Monarch technique even more in depth and patching up her weakness of having an unstable foundation. Chancellor Ba Shan's teaching in line with one's ability was different from what the directorates of Imperial College taught. He focused on Ling Yuxiu's weakness to groom her and finally allowed her to have a huge growth. However, Qin Mu looked at Royalties Park, which was almost torn down by this imperial princess. No idea who had she learned from to be so violent. The one that herds cows. Ling Yuxiu saw Qin Mu and her eyes lit up. She waved towards the royalty of Royalties Park and smiled. I'll stop for today. We'll fight another day. After she was done, she walked towards Qin Mu. Qin Mu praised, Sister Yuxiu, I haven't seen you for these few months and you've gotten even more powerful. Ling Yuxiu grumbled. Where have you been these days? You made me very worried. She immediately followed up. Chancellor Ba Shan is also very worried about you. You don't know, the Grand Chancellor has resigned. The new Grand Chancellor isn't Chancellor Ba Shan, and is that man sealed in ice which was rescued out from Surging River Dragon Palace by me and little General Qin. Man sealed in ice? Qin Mu's heart moved slightly. Could it be Gu Linwan? Ling Yuxiu saw that there was still a vast crowd gazing at them, and she was still shy after all, so she whispered, There are many people here. Let us go talk in my room. Qin Mu nodded his head and followed her. As the two of them walked into Royalties Park, a figure suddenly flashed and a handsome young man appeared in front of them with a solemn face. Seventh sister, how can you anyhow let a man into a woman's room? Let's go to my room instead. Ling Yushu's face turned red and said yes softly. Ling Yushu said with a black face, Scholar Qin, please. Qin Mu was bewildered. He had no idea where he had offended this imperial prince before, and he looked at him as though he wanted to gobble him up. They came to Ling Yushu's residence in Royalties Park and saw that this place had been decorated to look like a sunny south garden which looked very elegant. Even though the fake mountains weren't as high as mountains, they had running water wandering around. Even though the garden wasn't as huge as a forest, it was still a path to a serene and secluded place, being several times better than Scholar's residence. This place was like a small palace, and there were even palace maids walking to and fro, waiting upon him politely. These palace maids were also divine arts practitioners who were not only beautiful and also had strong abilities. Ling Yushu led them to the pavilion where there was quite a beautiful scenery and vast landscape. There were palace maids carrying an incense burner over and placed it beside the pavilion before lighting up the incense, causing the fragrance to rise in spirals. The sound of guqin sounded from not far away. This guqin sound was very slow and had a lingering temperament that was like two old men slowly playing chess, playing a tune or two after a brief pause, easily calming people's hearts down. Second Prince sure has quite a refined and elegant attitude of mind, Qin Mu exclaimed. Ling Yushu's expression softened and said, I still have to thank Academician Qin for taking care of my seventh sister during her trip to the Great Wall. Seventh sister has told me about the encounters in Roland's Golden Palace, and I know you have saved my sister many times. Yushu can't thank you enough in my heart. Ling Yushu smiled. Cowherd is very powerful. I thought he had died and I cried in front of the Roland's Golden Palace's shaman. The corner of Ling Yushu's eyes twitched. She cried? She didn't mention about this before. It's okay. It's just friendship of fellow schoolmates. This sister of mine also cried after a cat she had raised died. Ling Yushu thought to himself. We even met my cowherd's elders, and the elders praised me being sensible and were pleased with me. Ling Yushu smiled. The corner of Ling Yushu's eyes twitched again. She had already met the elders? Seventh sister didn't mention this either. Ling Yushu said excitedly, Second brother, Chancellor Ba Shan is indeed powerful. My abilities have improved hugely after he brought us out. You also saw it. If Chancellor Ba Shan can bring me and Cowherd out more, even you can't defeat me. Ling Yushu shook his head. I have inquired about it, and Chancellor Ba Shan will bring other reserved scholars when he goes out the next time. Ling Yushu was slightly disappointed. Ling Yushu looked at Qin Mu and said, Father had appointed Gu Linwan as the Grand Chancellor, and I've heard you have some enmity with Gu Linwan. After Gu Linwan had become the Grand Chancellor, he also asked the directorates of Imperial College about you. Ling Yushu smiled. I know about their enmity. Gu Linwan's junior protector sword was scammed by Cowherd, so he bears slight grudges. Ling Yushu said, It's best for Academician Qin to return junior protector sword to Gu Linwan. This guy was born from the Devil Path and is a master of the Devil Path who is usually petty. Father has appointed him as the Grand Chancellor, so I won't say much, but his breadth of mind is far inferior to the previous Grand Chancellor, so I can't assure he won't create trouble for you. I can be the mediator and let you meet up with him to resolve the enmity between you two. I guess he would let it go for my sake. Qin Mu shook his head and said, The rule of our great ruins is that there is no need to return things that are scammed. Ling Yushu seemed to give a smile that's yet not a smile. But this place is not great ruins. He is the Grand Chancellor, and it's very easy for him to take revenge on you. Qin Mu gave it some thought and said, I've heard that Gu Linwan said he was the junior protector of the Crown Prince. Junior protector of the Crown Prince means that he should be the teacher when the Crown Prince was young. Am I right? Second Prince, do you think Gu Linwan will give face to you? Ling Yushu's heart trembled slightly. Qin Mu continued, Second Prince, if he's willing to resolve the grudges, it's not a problem for me to break the rules of Great Ruins by returning Junior Protector's sword to him. However, I feel that even if I return Junior Protector's sword to him, he still won't give you face, nor will he resolve the grudges. Furthermore, Second Prince, ain't you worried about his giving you a hard time? Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 176. Grand Chancellor Gu. Ling Yushu had a flickering expression as Qin Mu was right about his worry. Gu Linwan was the teacher of the Crown Prince when he was young. The Crown Prince was older than him and occupied the position of the Crown Prince. If one could say that there was a world difference between a royalty and a commoner and the difference was as vast as the sky and the earth, then one could also say the difference between a Crown Prince and an Imperial Prince was as vast as the sky and the earth as well. Gu Linwan would definitely not give him face, and on the contrary, he would deliberately create trouble for him. He could confirm this for sure now. I won't interfere with the matter between you and Gu Linwan. Ling Yushu came to a decision and said, but you must be careful. The way Gu Linwan handles things is not like the previous Grand Chancellor. He doesn't have the breadth of mind for the long-term influence of a solid education. Qin Mu nodded his head and said, don't worry. Gu Linwan will at most create trouble for me and not dare to go overboard. Ling Yushu had a weird expression. Qin Mu seemed to be talking too big. Where did his confidence come from? Could he and seventh sister have already? A bad thought floated up in his mind. If he becomes the emperor's son-in-law, there was indeed no need for him to be afraid of Gu Linwan. Ling Yushu was silent for a moment and said, I plan to leave Imperial College and head to the borders to lead my troops. I'm the general of roaming cavalry and have an official position on me. Furthermore, I've also reached the age to lead the army. However, I'm just worried about my seventh sister. Qin Mu assured him, don't worry, second prince. There's me. The corners of Ling Yushu's eyes twitched as he thought to himself, that's exactly why I'm worried. Qin Mu chatted with the siblings for a moment before rising to bid farewell. I just came back home from a trip and have yet placed my luggage down. I have to return to Scholar's residence first. Ling Yushu sent him out of Royalty's Park and kept silent for a moment before saying to Ling Yushu, Academician Qin's frame of mind is not like a youth. He sees things very clearly and will definitely be a very capable person in the future. His words earlier struck the bottom of my heart. Ling Yushu burst into laughter and said, who says he's an adult? He doesn't even know anything and even says I'm chubby. He doesn't even know how to say appealing words. Ling Yushu shook his head and said, I'm going to write a letter to father and leave Imperial College. I can't be a scholar anymore. Now that Gu Linwan has become the Grand Chancellor, he most likely won't give you a nice look. If you can't stay in Imperial College any longer, you can follow me to the borders. Ling Yushu nodded her head. Don't worry, second brother. If I can't stay here any longer, I'll definitely go find you at the borders. However, I still want to cultivate along with Chancellor Ba Shan. Ling Yushu looked at her and knew exactly what she was thinking, but he couldn't say anything and could only shake his head. Qin Mu returned to Scholar's residence and the huge dragon Qilin followed behind him. On their way back, most of the scholars in Scholar's residence gazed at them with envy. Yun Kei came up with a smile and said, Sister Fox, I have earned enough money. Can I redeem my clothes back? Hu Linger took over the coin pouch and gave it a press before nodding her head. Wait for a moment. I'll go get it for you. Yun Kei was full of thanks. Hu Linger returned to the house to get his clothes back while shouting out, Those that owe me money, quickly take your money out to redeem your certificate of indebtedness. A scholar shook his head. Imperial Academician is a 6th-ranking official. Who dares to challenge him? Hu Linger was stunned for a moment before turning her head to tell Qin Mu. Young master, we lost our source of income. Our whole fortune is going to be eaten up, and we can't raise this big fella anymore. The dragon Qilin pulled his head back and muttered, A liter of scarlet fire spirit pills each day is also fine, as long as there's something to eat. Qin Mu consoled, Don't worry, I can raise you. That's right, do you have some saliva? Give me a bottle and let me see if I can exchange it for money. Hu Linger fetched a jade bottle over and collected a bottle of dragon saliva. Qin Mu kept the bottle safely and instructed them to stay home while he went to Hall of Supreme Healing. The few old imperial physicians were researching prescriptions in the hall and were all delighted when they saw him. Little divine physician is finally back. What spirit pill do you plan to make today? If it's an anesthetic or poison, please warn us beforehand. Qin Mu greeted these imperial physicians and said, I'm here to find imperial physicians to test a medicine. After he had said that, he took out a small jade bottle. When the few imperial physicians saw this small jade bottle, their expression changed hugely. Imperial physician Yu asked with a trembling voice, "I recognize this bottle. Is it another anesthetic?" "Nope. It's a healing panacea." When Qin Mu said that, Imperial physician Yu took out a small knife and hesitated for a moment before giving a slice on Imperial physician Ding's arm, causing the fresh blood to flow out. Imperial physician Ding went into a fury and was about to blow up when Qin Mu hurried forward. He opened the jade bottle and applied a little dragon saliva on the wound, only to see the wound heal immediately and returning to its original state within a few breaths' time without even having a scar. The few imperial physicians were astonished, and they immediately gathered forward. Imperial physician Yu asked, "To what extent of injuries can this healing panacea cure? Can it reattach broken limbs?" Qin Mu nodded his head. "It can. There was a person who got severed from the waist, and I had used this medicine to reattach his body, returning it to normal. However, this medicine only acts as a support. The tendons and nerves still need to be manually reattached, which puts one's technique to the test." Imperial physician Ding glanced to the side and saw Imperial physician Yu raised his knife again and immediately shouted, "If you dare to chop me, I'll poison your whole family." Imperial physician Yu couldn't do it and went out of the hall. After a moment, he brought a scholar in. All the Imperial physicians immediately shook their heads, and Imperial physician Yu stomped his feet in anger. "Old Yu, are you mad? Even if you want to test medicine, you can't chop his limbs." That scholar broke out in cold sweat when he heard it and immediately ran away. Imperial physician Yu wanted to catch him back and was immediately blocked by the other Imperial physicians. You absolutely can't. Scholars are 8th-ranking officials. You're going to face a lawsuit if you chop their limbs off. Taoist Ling Yun has a crane that had fought with Chancellor Ba Shan's green cow a few days ago and got her leg broken by the green cow. You can fetch that crane over and sever her leg to reattach it. Imperial physician Yu went out again and brought the crane back after a moment. Imperial physician Chu clamped the crane's beak, making the crane indescribably terrified and unable to struggle. Imperial physician Yu followed the injuries and severed the leg off. The few Imperial physicians cleaned up the shattered bones and waited for Qin Mu to treat it. After a moment, Taoist Ling Yun barged in and was about to blow up when he saw Qin Mu reattaching the crane's broken bones before reattaching the muscles and nerves, clearing the bone marrow. Taoist Ling Yun didn't dare to say a word and waited until Qin Mu had finished reattaching the leg. Only then did the Imperial physicians loosen their restraint. That crane immediately stood up and moved her leg around in astonishment. She expressed her thanks to Qin Mu sincerely with a loud and clear voice which belonged to a little girl. Qin Mu wrote down a prescription and handed it to Taoist Ling Yun. "Brew medicines on this prescription and boil some water to soak her injured leg. It can help stimulate the nerves and channels, removing any hidden damages." Taoist Ling Yun saw his crane recovering and couldn't help being surprised and delighted. He immediately took the prescription and expressed his thanks profusely with a smile. "You beat me in front of the Emperor, and I had still borne some grudges before. Now I am even grateful to you." Qin Mu smiled. "Don't fight. Won't make friends." Taoist Ling Yun kept feeling this sentence was a little awkward and used in the wrong circumstances, but he didn't brood on it. He immediately called his crane over and headed to the warehouse to grab the herbs. Qin Mu smiled. "Imperial physicians, how much does this bottle of healing medicine worth? I'm recently tight on money." The few Imperial physicians were surprised and delighted. Imperial physician Yu said, "Little divine physician wants to sell? It has quite a considerable value. This kind of healing medicine is even more precious than any natural treasures to the soldiers on the battlefield. I reckon it would be worth 10,000 great abundance coins." Qin Mu was astonished and said, "Even faster than Fan Yunxiao robbing people? What?" The Imperial physician didn't catch what he said. "Nothing much." Qin Mu smiled. "I can refine a bottle out every day and sell it of Hall of Supreme Healing for 10,000 gold. How is that?" The Imperial physician's eyes lighted up and they looked at one another. Imperial physician Yu said, "That would naturally be the best." Qin Mu was satisfied and took his leave. The white heads of the few Imperial physicians huddled together and Imperial physician Chu said, "We're getting rich." All the Imperial physicians nodded their heads. unable to contain their excitement. Old you is still the wise one. This small bottle of healing medicine isn't worth just 10,000 gold. We can easily earn 2 times the price by selling it. Qin Mu walked out of Hall of Supreme Healing and returned to Scholar's residence when a voice suddenly came from behind him. Little bald donkey, where's your Kakura staff? Qin Mu stopped and turned around to look at the elder in purple behind him. With a smile on his face, he bowed. Student meets Grand Chancellor Gu. This elder in purple was Gu Linwan, and the 9 coat of arms was nowhere to be seen on his purple robes. It seemed like he had taken off his first-ranking official robes and changed into third-ranking official robes. Gu Linwan gave a wee smile and walked toward him while speaking leisurely. When you scammed my junior protector sword, did you expect the day would come that you would land in the grasp of my hand instead? Qin Mu shook his head and said, What is Grand Chancellor saying this for? Gu Linwan gave a haughty smile and stretched out his hand. Hand it over! Qin Mu shook his head again. I never return the things I scammed. Gu Linwan gave off a fierce gaze and Qin Mu was not scared at all. I'm now a 6th-ranking official and the imperial academician that was appointed by the emperor himself. Empress Dowager's illness was cured by me. If you touch me, the emperor will execute your whole family. Boom! The devil chi around Gu Linwan went into a turmoil and formed a 1,000-feet devil god behind him with murderous looking. That 1,000-feet devil god solidified the surrounding air and seemed to even warp the space as well, making this devil look warped like the blazing noon sun scorching the ground as it stared fiercely at him. Qin Mu smiled and asked, Does Grand Chancellor still have anything else? Gu Linwan said coldly, If I want to kill you, I won't have to do it myself. You also won't dare to do it. Before Qin Mu could say anything, a voice sounded behind Gu Linwan. If you touch my junior brother, there's no need for the emperor to execute your whole family. I'll execute your whole family. Gu Linwan's body froze and he felt as if there was an unbreakable knife at his neck. He chuckled and said, Chancellor Ba Shan? You want to stand up for this little bald donkey? Chancellor Ba Shan stood behind him with his chest wide open and his 2 knives rattling non-stop behind his back. Without any expression, he said, Old Gu, you have not appeared for 200 years. Your path, skills, and divine arts are already behind times. Do you need me to give you some guidance? Gu Linwan suddenly laughed out loudly and his body vanished as he turned into devil chi. With his voice coming from afar, he mocked, Give me guidance? Except it was heaven knife here. Qin Mu turned around and suddenly saw a knife chi breaking through the air to chase that devil chi. Chancellor Ba Shan always likes to fight and must be delighted to see a prey. I reckon he's gonna fight with Gu Linwan. What a pity I can't catch up to them. Qin Mu sighed and returned to Scholar's residence. Just as he entered the door, he heard Hu Linger's voice sounding out, Young master, we have a visitor. Qin Mu entered the door and couldn't help being stunned when he saw a middle-aged man waiting in the courtyard with hands behind his back. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned around and his gaze landed on him. The sacred cult master of Heavenly Saint Cult. Who would have thought he is the first imperial academician of our imperial college? How interesting. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 177. Knowledge is action, action is knowledge. Qin Mu's mind trembled hugely as he walked into the courtyard. Imperial Preceptor didn't come over just to talk about interesting stuff? Linger, watch the tea. Hu Linger immediately said, Young master, our house has no tea. You don't drink tea. Qin Mu laughed and said, Buy and prepare some tea in the future. Since we have no tea, watch the seats. There are only a few broken stools in Scholar's residence. Where do we have seats? The little fox grumbled. Qin Mu was slightly awkward. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor waved his hand and smiled. No need to trouble yourself. I'll just say a few words with Cult Master and I'll leave. Qin Mu's gaze landed on his face. This appearance of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, the number 1 man under gods that awed the world, couldn't be said to be extremely handsome. He only looked ordinary, but there was an indescribable flavor to his face. It was the type that the more you watched it, it grew more and more pleasing in your eyes. His eyes stood out the most on his body. They were eyes that were filled with wisdom and seemed to carry a little sparkle in them, watching over everything in the world to make the wisest decision. To this eternal peace imperial preceptor, Qin Mu had a favorable impression and was filled with admiration to this pioneer who broke away from the old conventions. For Eternal Peace Empire to be what it is today, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has a higher contribution than the Emperor. Taking charge of the reform to reform the army and the government, to break the view of sex, to break the barrier between the three big sects by establishing primary schools, colleges, and Imperial College, to set up an institution for scholars, this Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has made this generation become exceptionally wonderful. Even though he admired him, Qin Mu still had criticism and resentment to this Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was not only gifted by heavens, he was also ruthless. He sent a punitive expedition to great ruins, and even though he beat a retreat in the face of difficulties, it didn't mean he won't do it the next time. He suppressed all countries with armed force and annexed them. To uproot those that opposed him, he faked that he was severely injured to bait those sects who had already acknowledged their allegiance to rebel, causing the people to be in a terrible situation. This was not a perfect person. From the beginning to the end, Qin Mu couldn't see what this man was trying to achieve. His breadth of mind was vast and could clearly show tolerance for the whole world, yet he had to extinguish other countries and invade great ruins so as to gain more land for Eternal Peace Empire. He clearly had no lust for power, but he didn't hesitate to raise a bloodbath just to eradicate those that opposed him. To Qin Mu, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was like a contradiction. It was very difficult to guess what he was thinking. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was also sizing him up, and after a moment, he said with a gentle voice, "The sacred cult master or heavenly saint cult is unexpectedly young." I was also shocked when I had received news that the sacred cult master was actually the imperial academician of our imperial college. You didn't seem surprised when you saw me. Qin Mu said, "Heavenly saint cult provides education for everyone, irrespective of background. Therefore it's natural that imperial preceptor could place a few men among the higher-ups of heavenly saint cult. I'm not surprised imperial preceptor could discover my identity so quickly." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor nodded his head. The sacred cult master of Heavenly Saint Cult should have this kind of wisdom. However, how did you not panic when you saw me? Aren't you afraid I'm here to kill you? If Imperial Preceptor wants to kill me, there's no use even if I panic. Qin Mu said, "If you don't kill me, Heavenly Saint Cult won't rebel. If you kill me, Heavenly Saint Cult will rebel. My life is not as valuable as Heavenly Saint Cult, so Imperial Preceptor doesn't have the need to kill me. Therefore, there's no need for me to panic." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor smiled. "Don't be so sure. It's good to be smart, but you might guess wrong if you're overconfident. However, you had indeed moved my heart. You said Heavenly Saint Cult won't rebel. Can you tell me the reason?" Qin Mu said, "We have the same philosophy, so there's no need to rebel." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, "I've heard the first thing you had done after you became the cult master is to establish the 361st Hall, to set up school hall?" Qin Mu nodded his head. "I'm imitating Imperial Preceptor to reform Heavenly Saint Cult. Heavenly Saint Cult was originally an empire draped with the name of a sect. If you imitate me and reform Heavenly Saint Cult, won't it become the empire within the empire in my eternal peace?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked, "If it was during times of peace, you guys would definitely not rebel, but if the world is in chaos, why don't you guys take this chance to rise up and overtake as the Orthodox?" The reason why Heavenly Saint Cult didn't rebel in this period of unrest is not that we don't want to overtake as the Orthodox, and is because the current Eternal Peace Empire is a large-scaled Heavenly Saint Cult. Qin Mu smiled. "Why do we have to rebel ourselves? In that case, when will you guys rebel?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor became interested and asked. Qin Mu solemnly said, "When the time comes for Imperial Preceptor to betray the philosophy of Heavenly Saint Cult and no longer to carry out the path of the saint, that's the time Eternal Peace Empire would no longer be Heavenly Saint Cult, and my Heavenly Saint Cult will definitely rebel." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gave him a glance while exclaiming, "What great guts you have!" Qin Mu said, "This isn't great guts. I have to tell the truth because Imperial Preceptor will know if I lie." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor slowly walked to the well in the courtyard and said at a speed that was neither too fast nor too slow. You came from great ruins and have no foundation in Heavenly Saint cult. I originally planned to control you and let you borrow my power to establish yourself in Heavenly Saint cult. However, I no longer have this idea. Qin Mu walked to his side and heard Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor continuing. People like you are dangerous. Those who have their own ideas are usually very dangerous and give people a headache since it's very difficult to convince them. Convincing a person is the most strenuous thing, and it would be better off by simply killing them. To convince a cult, that's even more strenuous, and it would be better off to eradicate them. No matter if it's Tao sect or Great Thunderclap Monastery, they have their own philosophies and it's very hard to convince them. It's the same for Heavenly Saint cult. He kept silent for a moment and said, Luckily, the philosophy of Heavenly Saint cult and the philosophy of Eternal Peace Empire don't conflict. Qin Mu was curious. Imperial Preceptor won't touch Heavenly Saint cult for now. What about Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery? That would depend on what they do. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said seriously, Let's see if they could achieve knowledge is action and action is knowledge. If they could carry out their ideas and achieve knowledge is action and action is knowledge, I will do everything in my power to get rid of them. If they can't do it, it isn't hard for them to live on. Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly and asked, What's Imperial Preceptor's philosophy then? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head. I have no need to tell you. Don't look at what I say, look at what I do. My philosophy is in my actions. This is knowledge is action and action is knowledge. Young sacred cult master, you still have a long road to go. Qin Mu still couldn't see through this person. Qin Mu, at the current stage, still could not debate over the philosophy with people like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyesight was too high and his knowledge was too vast and too shrewd. His understanding of the paths, skills, and divine arts had reached such a level that people could only look up to him. Qin Mu was not yet at this level. He couldn't think through Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's thought and didn't know if he would be a friend or foe. However, as for now, Qin Mu had to plan for Heavenly Devil Cult's future as the sacred cult master. As for the internal strife in Eternal Peace Empire, our Heavenly Saint cult would fully support Imperial Preceptor. Qin Mu carefully thought of a way to express his words. However, I need a promise from Imperial Preceptor. After quelling the rebellion, would Imperial Preceptor eradicate our cult and burn the bridges? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned to look at him and replied, I won't. Qin Mu gave an expression of inquiry. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said leisurely, I need encouragement. Leaving Heavenly Devil Cult means I'm leaving a sword hanging over my head, spurring me and warning me that I can't make any mistake. He gave a smile. If I'm too strong, even I made a mistake, what people could do to me. I need a power which can kill me when I lose my Tao heart. Heavenly Saint cult is very good. If I go against your philosophy, I'll be waiting for you to kill me. Qin Mu was slightly frightened. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor took a step and left. Qin Mu let out a murky breath and felt his hairs almost exploding out. There was only one thought in his mind. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor isn't a human, non-human. As long as it's a human, it would have 7 emotional states and 6 desires. It would have thoughts of selfishness. Yet Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor didn't have 7 emotional states, 6 desires, and totally no thoughts of selfishness. Without these things, he was a human no more. Or perhaps he could be called a saint. Could Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor be a saint? He composed himself and drove away the thoughts that plagued him. At this moment, the dragon Qilin spoke with a low and muffled voice. This person is very terrifying. He stood here and I could see him. However, I couldn't feel him. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He did not use Green Heaven's eyes to take a look at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and lost a chance. He had once used Heaven's eyes to look at Village Chief and he saw a magnificent and imposing god that had an intact body. If he looked at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, what would he see? Outside Scholar's residence, Qin Feiyue was bowing and waiting outside as Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked over and said, Let's return. Qin Feiyue didn't dare to say much, and while they were walking, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor suddenly said, "Grand Chancellor has good judgment." Qin Feiyue smiled. Gu Linwan might be not bad, but after being sealed in ice for 200 years and not moving forward, I'm afraid he might be behind times. I meant the other Grand Chancellor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned his head back and said, "The successor he has chosen is very good and showing great promise. However, he's very like me, and it made me slightly uncomfortable seeing this person as I kept thinking of killing him." Qin Feiyue didn't understand what he was saying. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked further and further away while muttering, "I hate looking in the mirror. The me in the mirror is never as perfect as the me in my ideals." In Scholar's residence, Qin Mu could finally be at ease. His unity technique was yet perfected, and he had to calm his heart down to comprehend it attentively, perfecting it as much as he could. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gave him a very big impact. A person who fights for his ideals always gives a charm that makes people admire from the bottom of their heart. As for Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor saying that leaving Heavenly Devil cult meant leaving a sword hanging above his head, to achieve this step it was very difficult. Even with the combined power of the entire Heavenly Devil cult, they couldn't achieve this step. Since Imperial Preceptor is so heroic, we have to fulfill his wish. Qin Mu executed his technique and slowly walked in the courtyard. He comprehended the unity technique he had created from the foundation of Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique in detail and sorted them out. He also took out great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures from time to make some referencing. After quite some time, Qin Mu let out a murky breath and his speed suddenly increased. He sprinted frantically throughout the whole mountain and executed the unity technique which he had comprehended out. His body flitted back and forth the mountain like flickering light and passing shadows. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 178. 9 Transformations, 3 Conditions. Even though Qin Mu was sprinting at a flying speed, his brain was still continuing to think, becoming unprecedentedly active. Even though they didn't talk much, this meeting with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had made his brain sink into a stimulated state. Meeting an unmatched talent would excite oneself, give pressure to oneself and raise oneself up. Even though it was only a normal conversation to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, it had an extraordinary significance to Qin Mu. Just by standing in front of this legendary figure, he would require a huge amount of courage, and while talking to him, he would need to set all his wisdom into motion. By conversing with intelligent people, it would fill oneself with wisdom, and if one kept company with ordinary people, they would become ordinary as well. Qin Mu made use of this opportunity where he was conversing with Imperial Preceptor to let his wisdom be at his tip-top state, taking this chance to perfect unity technique. Suddenly, his footsteps slowed down and his vital qi circulated through the new and improved Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique. The current Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique was the unity technique he had perfected, which had the good points of numerous techniques from great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures integrated into it. The original Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique had no attributes and was solely used to execute other techniques and skills. Its power couldn't be compared to the techniques which came with their own divine arts. For example, Thunderclap 8 Strikes requires Rulai's Mahayana Sutra to be able to unleash its full power. Secrets of Moving Rain requires Black Tortoise Water Control Technique to execute it. Secrets of Rolling Thunder and Flames requires Vermilion Bird Fire Control Technique to master it. Only then could the power of the thunder and flames be completely unleashed. Meanwhile, Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique was a technique and didn't come with spells or divine arts. Comprehending unity technique this time, Qin Mu had used Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique as the foundation to comprehend the teaching of the woodcutter on the rock. He aroused all kinds of characteristics from Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique to allow it to unleash the power of all kinds of skills. Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique had no attributes, so it couldn't be used for body refinement. It also had no divine arts coming with it, therefore it couldn't turn into powerful attacks. However, comprehending unity technique this time, Qin Mu had finally solved this difficult problem. And now, Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique had become even more all-embracing. By using the Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique improved by him, the spells, sword skills, Battle techniques executed were no weaker than using the coherent technique to execute them. This was the so-called unity technique of great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Every cult master of heavenly devil cult had their own unique unity technique, and the young patriarch's original intention was to let Qin Mu cultivate both unity technique and Overlord Body 3 elixir technique at the same time after comprehending it. Even though it might be slower, he could attain the advantages of both techniques simultaneously. But he never thought Qin Mu would directly make improvements on Overlord Body 3 elixir technique instead of comprehending the technique that was built from the foundation of great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Qin Mu didn't know if this was good or bad, or if it was the correct decision. Ever since he was young, he had cultivated Overlord Body 3 elixir technique and was most familiar with this technique. Thus, he had subconsciously changed Overlord Body 3 elixir technique into unity technique. The most crucial point was that he had resolved the inadequateness of Overlord Body 3 elixir technique on body refinement, spells, and battle techniques. He executed the improved Overlord Body 3 elixir technique, and now, Overlord Body 3 elixir technique had fused 9 transformations 3 conditions mystery technique, the body refinement technique of great educational heavenly devil scriptures. This technique was a top-notch body refinement technique in great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Qin Mu had all along been envious of the body refinement techniques of the battle technique school. However, Old Ma, Butcher, and Cripple had not taught him techniques of this area, therefore, he could only find it from great educational heavenly devil scriptures. As he executed the technique, Qin Mu instantly felt the extraordinary points of the improved Overlord Body 3 elixir technique. His vital qi was circulating rapidly and permeating into his skin, muscles, tendons, hairs, and bone marrow. In the past, his Overlord Body 3 elixir technique had a simpler path of circulation in his body, and now his Overlord Body 3 elixir technique has reached into all parts of his body. Other than refining his body, the new Overlord Body 3 elixir technique also refines his soul, his qi, being extremely superior. Qin Mu started to walk slower and slower as he gradually stopped. He experienced the inadequate points in his technique with detail and amended them. The basic structure of his unity technique had already been determined, and all that's lacking was the minor details. He was very lacking in body refinement and soul refinement. Now he only felt like his body was a dried land that had not seen rain for half a year, which was currently absorbing all the moisture and nutrients from the rainwater frantically. Great educational heavenly devil scriptures 9 transformations 3 conditions was the 9 transformations of vital qi and corporeal body and the 3 conditions of bones in the body. The first condition was bones inseparably close, the second condition was body like iron, and the third condition was like mountain. Now he was only at the stage of the first transformation and first condition. Unknowingly, half a day had passed by and Qin Mu slowly came to floor of heavenly records. In front of floor of heavenly records, a secretary passed by coincidentally and gave him a glance. His face immediately changed and he cried out, "Academician Qin, you'd better recuperate yourself, otherwise you won't live for much longer." Qin Mu was bewildered and didn't understand what he meant. Suddenly a wind blew and he instantly felt giddy and collapsed. Crap! Qin Mu was astonished and immediately raised his hands. Looking at his emaciated arms, he touched his face and could only feel his thin skin that was clinging onto his cheekbones. The clothes that were originally very fitting had now become slightly loose. Only now then did he notice he had become terrifying skinny in 4 hours, like a person made from firewood. Not only that, his corporeal body was also exhausted. Furthermore, as he executed Overlord Body 3 elixir technique, the speed of this kind of exhaustion increased exponentially. When the energy in his corporeal body got exhausted completely, his death would be due. He only focused on perfecting Overlord Body 3 elixir technique and cultivating the skills of body refinement and soul refinement. However, he didn't pay attention to his body and only knew now that he was burnout. The new Overlord Body 3 elixir technique has quite a serious hidden danger. The cultivation speed is too fast and I've forgotten that body refinement uses the energy in my own body. When the energy in my body is exhausted, it would create an extremely heavy burden on my body. He was already at 5 elements realm and had a dense cultivation. However, cultivating the new Overlord Body 3 elixir technique to refine his body and soul The energy in his body couldn't even last 4 hours. Qin Mu immediately stopped executing Overlord Body 3 elixir technique and let his mind clear up. His mind was working frantically, and he troubled himself over how to make a medicine for his body as he sprinted towards Scholar's residence. Qin Mu rushed into his own room to grab money before sprinting towards Imperial College, leaving behind the little fox and the dragon Qilin bewildered. He bought the herbs from the warehouse and didn't have time to return to his residence, thus, he started refining the medicine on the way back. He executed his dazzling hand techniques and dazzled people's eyes as he refined the medicine. Before he even reached Scholar's residence, he had succeeded in refining a furnace of pills. When these spirit pills were just done, there was actually a faint Buddha voice, as if there was a Buddha in each pill chanting their prayers. The moment these spirit pills were done, Qin Mu opened his mouth to suck the pills in a series. He catalyzed the medicinal energy as he rushed towards his courtyard, and the moment he reached the door, he suddenly felt dizzy and collapsed into the courtyard. Hu Linger cried out and immediately scrambled over. Qin Mu only felt at ease when he saw Hu Linger at his side before he fainted. "Help me catalyze the medicinal energy." Before he even finished his words, he fainted. When Qin Mu woke up groggily, he felt that the medicinal energy of the spirit pills in his stomach had already been catalyzed and was circulating a warm flow towards 4 limbs and 100 bones like a scalding great furnace. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief and felt the lingering fear. The United Overlord Body 3 elixir was good but also extremely dangerous. If he didn't take the chance when he was still conscious to refine spirit pills as a remedy, the consequences would be inconceivable and he would probably have died. If I can't supplement the energy exhausted by my body when I refine my body and soul with Overlord Body 3 elixir technique, I would probably die. Qin Mu opened his eyes and laid there silently. He calculated to himself, if I want to fix this technique, it would be very difficult. It involves me to mobilize my entire body, and if I fix it, it would probably take an extremely long amount of time. In that case, I'd better not cultivate it. Hu Linger stood at the side and looked at him anxiously. The dragon Qilin squatted outside the window and wanted to push his head into the window to see if his meal master was still alive. However, his head was too big and the window could only allow one of his eyes in. He couldn't squeeze into the house at all. Qin Mu sat up and found out that he was lying on the bed. It should be the little fox who had used her demon wind to send him to the bed. He smiled. "There's no need to worry. I'm already fine. When I completely catalyze these medicinal energies, my body will recover." Hu Linger let out a sigh of relief and said, "Young master has scared me to death. In just a short time, you have become so starved and skinny. When you collapsed earlier, I was worried you couldn't get up anymore." Qin Mu catalyzed the medicinal energy at ease, and the medicinal energy spread out and was absorbed by his body. He won't die for now, but his body was still in a state of deficiency. This was the inner deficiency caused by refining his body and soul. His body and soul may be stronger, but there were no nutrients to replenish him. It was like a ship flying in the sky. If only a small furnace was provided as motive power for the ship would definitely fall from the sky and shatter into pieces. That was what had just happened to him. Refining his soul had exhausted his spirit, and refining his body had exhausted the energy in his body. The spirit pills he had refined was to replenish his spirit and not allow his spirit to be completely exhausted. However, his body was still in a severe starving state. Now that his spirit had completely recovered, his body was still terrifyingly skinny with his skin clinging onto his bone. Qin Mu stood up and asked, "Linger, is there anything to eat? I'm very hungry now. Does young master want to eat the green bull?" The huge eyeball of the dragon Qilin outside the window rotated as he said in glee, "There's a wild bull in the back mountain. How about I catch and roast it for young master to eat?" Once this dragon Qilin was no longer hungry. He was full of evil tricks and always wanted to take revenge on the green bull. Hu Linger smiled. "Please wait a moment, young master. Big dragon, let us get some food for young master." After she had said it, she ran out of the house like a wisp of smoke and brought the dragon Qilin out of Scholar's residence. "Sister Linger, where are we going to find food?" the dragon Qilin asked in bewilderment. "Do you know how to swim?" Hu Linger asked. There are a few huge fish in Jade Dragon Lake which are several yards long. I've been eyeing them for quite a long time. The dragon Qilin replied in glee. I've also eyed them for quite a long time, but it wasn't good for me to make a move when Old Master didn't give the command. Don't worry, I'm also very good at swimming. I can stay underwater for several days and not come up to breathe. Linger was greatly delighted and came to Jade Dragon Lake with him. There was a Taoist opposite the lake and revealed a questioning expression when he saw them, but before he could make an inquiry, he saw the dragon Qilin diving into the lake. The expression of the Taoist changed hugely and he immediately shouted, "That lion! You can't bathe in the lake! That fox! Stop the lion!" Linger immediately said, "Big dragon, faster, faster." Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 179. Spirit Returning Pill Great Supplement Technique. The dragon Qilin dived into the lake and stirred up waves. On the lake, the Taoist immediately hurried over with a horsetail whisk in his hand. Shaking it towards the lake, the numerous threads scattered down like a giant fishing net, trying to catch that dragon Qilin in the lake. Rumble. The surface of the lake trembled violently and the Taoist gave a grunt. Only the handle of his horsetail whisk was left, and he knew he wasn't a match for this dragon Qilin. Thus, he immediately turned and ran while shouting, "Demon! You guys dare to bathe in the Jade Dragon Lake of the royal family and even dared to beat me. Just you wait to be executed." Not long later, the scholars of Imperial College walked out from Hall of Pure Yang and toward scholars' residence. Today it was Taoist Ling Yun teaching, and what Hall of Pure Yang taught was the path of cultivating qi. Taoist Ling Yun was widely known for his profound cultivation, cultivating his qi into the level of pure yang. Before the numerous scholars could even return to scholars' residence, they all stopped and looked back in astonishment, freezing on the spot. They only saw a ridiculously huge red fish flying through the air. There were red scales on the body of the red fish and on its head were dragon's horns. This was because after absorbing the qi of the 9 dragons here for many years, the fish head had started to turn into a dragon. It was like a half-fish, half-dragon that had a mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth, looking extremely fierce. However, now this huge fish was being restrained by a few vital qi and couldn't move at all. A demon wind was carrying this huge fish towards scholars' residence, causing all the scholars to be dumbfounded. Behind this huge fish was an even larger dragon Qilin that was running and shaking off the water on his body at the same time. There was also a white-colored fox that was standing on the head on the dragon Qilin, raising demon wind to carry the huge fish. That dragon Qilin rushed into scholars' residence and threw the huge fish into the courtyard of Academician Qin with a thump. The little fox then scampered into the courtyard and shut the doors. A scholar muttered, "That fish seems to be one of the fish kings in Jade Dragon Lake. It's called red dragon carp, and it's an imperial cuisine that the emperor treats the civil and military officials during the New Year feast." A scholar beside was also in a daze as he muttered, "Last year, my old father was indebted to the emperor's benevolence and had a taste of the fish soup on the imperial dragon feast. He came back exclaiming endlessly and even kept telling me it was a worldly delicacy until now. However, that red dragon carp was only a foot long. This one." Before the other scholars came around to their senses, they saw the door to Qin Mu's room opening up again. This white fox scampered out again and looked around before running to a mulberry tree. She then spat out a demon wind and chopped down the mulberry tree. She then controlled the demon wind to turn into curved blades to chop the mulberry tree into firewood before bringing them back into the courtyard. The little fox took a few trips and even carried the trunk of the tree back into the courtyard. Billowing smoke then came surging out from Qin Mu's courtyard. It was obvious that the little fox and the dragon Qilin was currently raising a fire to roast the fish. The scholars looked at one another and Chu Ting muttered, "That's the ambition tree planted by monk Qing Shan, the directorate of Hall of Azure Yang. It's a tree planted to motivate scholars to seek knowledge." Not long after, the delicious fragrance spread throughout scholars' residence. Saliva started flowing out from all of the scholars' mouth. The fox and dragon Qilin this abandoned person had brought over, killed the fish king in the drinking grounds of the royal family before chopping down the ambition tree that monk Qing Shan planted to use it to raise fire for roasting the fish. This act of recklessness, are they trying to rebel? "Young master, How's the taste? The youth and the fox's conversation came over from Qin Mu's courtyard, and they heard Qin Mu saying, "Still okay. It's just that it wasn't marinated, thus the flavor wasn't soaked through. It's best to marinate a fish for a whole day so it would be crisp, fragrant, and tender when you eat it. This fish is pretty huge. Where did you get it from?" "From the lake." "So I see. I once fished with Grand Chancellor beside the lake and saw a few huge red fish. However, we only caught a 9-dragon carp, which was quite small. However, the flavor of the soup was very delicious. It's pretty good of you to use mulberry wood to roast the fish. It gives off sweet and sour fruity taste of the mulberry." All the scholars in Scholar's residence had an expression of rejoice in his upcoming misfortune. Chu Ting snickered. "Academician Qin is dead meat." In the courtyard, Qin Mu prodded the thick wooden skewer to rotate the red dragon carp, and below was a vigorous flame, which was the mulberry flames controlled by the dragon Qilin, roasting the huge fish tender on the inside and crisp on the outside. The dragon Qilin controlled the fire to let the heat seep into the meat and bones of the huge fish. The mulberry wood gave off water vapor, thus there was a smoky flavor. Hu Linger then controlled the wind to let some of the smoky flavors enter the meat of the fish. They then stuffed numerous mulberry leaves, onions, and ginger into the stomach of the fish. In the stomach of the fish was tender fish oil, which sizzled when it dripped onto the fire as they roasted the fish. The fish oil gave off a smoky smell when burned, raising their appetite hugely. When the entire fish was cooked, Hu Linger immediately controlled her wind blades to slice off the meat from the fish belly. The meat here was the plumpest. Her knife work was very good as each slice of fish was precise. At the same time, she also controlled the plate to let the slices of fish fall onto the plate. Each slice of fish was crystal clear, and the slices looked like pieces of tender jade white fat from mutton. Qin Mu suppressed the fire and lowered the intensity of the fire. The human, the fox, and the dragon Qilin sat beside the bonfire and ate the roasted fish. Qin Mu's heart slightly moved when he remembered a weird technique in great educational heavenly devil scriptures, which was called Spirit Returning Pill Great Supplement Technique. He immediately executed his vital qi to circulate this technique to speed up his digestion. Soon his stomach became empty, thus his mouth continued with eating the roasted fish around the bonfire. The name of this technique was weird, and the technique itself was even weirder. The main method of cultivation for Spirit Returning Pill Great Supplement Technique relied mainly on eating. This technique could transform any food that reached the stomach into energy or even vital qi for the body. This helped to strengthen one's body and raise their cultivation. Thus it was called Spirit Returning Pill Great Supplement Technique. Now that Qin Mu's body was so skinny, he needed to replenish the energy he had exhausted in his body. Now that there was a ridiculously huge roasted fish in front of him, he could use this technique to supplement his body. This fish was a unique breed after all. Living in Imperial College for so many years, it had absorbed the qi of the 9 dragons. Thus it was firstly delicious, and secondly, its meat was nutritious. Now Qin Mu's body was exhausted. By executing this weird technique, the food in his stomach was immediately digested into nutrients which were absorbed by his whole body. His shriveled muscles also gradually bulged, and even though it was very slow, Qin Mu reckoned his muscles would grow back if he finished eating this 10 yards long fish. Hu Linger couldn't stuff herself any longer, and the dragon Qilin used to eat scarlet fire spirit pills, thus he didn't like the fish meat very much and stopped after a few mouthfuls. Only Qin Mu continued to sit there eating to his heart's content. Suddenly a knock came from outside, and Hu Linger dragged her bulging tummy and ran to open the door. Wei Yong walked in with his nose twitching and smiled. "It's just the time for lunch, and I smell a fragrance coming from Brother Qin's place. Thus I've come to ask for food. The stone dragon lion at the mountain gate has come to life? Little fox, how did you get even fatter than me from eating?" Hu Linger gave a snort. Wei Yong then looked at Qin Mu, who was sitting beside the bonfire, and cried out in astonishment. "Little fox, did you borrow Qin Mu's male force to strengthen your feminine health by sleeping with him? Brother Qin? How did he become so skinny?" Hu Linger was furious and anxious. "I haven't got a chance to do it. Don't speak nonsense. If you didn't do it, who did?" Wei Yong was bewildered. "I knew that there would definitely be a problem when Brother Qin asked where the cat house was the moment he entered the capital city. Your body has become unable to tolerate as expected. Am I right? Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and invited him to sit down. Wei Yong didn't hold back and tore off a huge chunk of fish meat. He tasted it, and the meat was so slippery that it slid straight down his throat, nearly causing his tongue to slip into his stomach as well. He couldn't help being surprised and delighted as he exclaimed in admiration. He then spoke with a low and muffled voice. The directorates are all not very pleased when you haven't attended their lessons for the past few months. They said stuff like Imperial Academician being ignorant and incompetent, that the Emperor shouldn't have raised your ranks. That's right, what happened to you? How did you become so skinny? I had made a mistake in my cultivation and almost lost my life. Qin Mu said, Lucky I discovered just in time, and now I'm replenishing my energy back. Wei Yong smiled. You have pretty big guts as well, to actually cultivate recklessly. I'm also an Imperial scholar now and have some position in Duke's Manor. What pills do you need? I can grab some from Duke's Manor to let you supplement your body. Qin Mu shook his head and said, When I finish eating this fish, my body would be able to recover, and there would be no need for me to consume spirit pills. Do you know? Chancellor Ba Shan and Grand Chancellor Gu had fought each other and got each other all bloodied outside the capital city. Even the Emperor was alarmed. Wei Yong had a burp and said, My father went to mediate in the quarrel along with other first-ranking high officials, and only then did they stop fighting. I went out to make some inquiries and heard that the Emperor had called them both over to give them a harsh scolding. Only when I finished asking around, I came back to freeload a meal here. Before you came back, Chancellor Ba Shan had found me and said he wanted to bring me out for an experience. I reckon, Brother Wei, don't talk while eating. Not long after, Wei Yong, this chubby youth, had grown even bigger and he couldn't eat anymore. However, he still saw Qin Mu continuing to eat heartily, and with each piece of fish going into his stomach actually didn't bulge at all. Wei Yong was amazed. When he saw Qin Mu's skinny body expanding out as if he was filled with air, he gave a pinch and found there were all muscles in his body, making him even more astonished. When this huge fish had been completely finished, only a huge fish bone that spanned up to 10 yards long was left. Qin Mu's body had recovered to normal and seemed to be even stronger than before, making Wei Yong incessantly envious. Where did you buy such a delicious fish from? Wei Yong's mouth was still itching for more, but he just couldn't eat any more, thus he asked, I have never seen such a huge fish in the market of the capital city, nor have I ever eaten such a delicious fish. I definitely have to buy a few more and give special attention to them. Qin Mu said indifferently, Fished out from Jade Dragon Lake. Wei Yong stared with his eyes wide open and asked immediately, Which Jade Dragon Lake? The one in our Imperial College. Wei Yong gulped and asked with a trembling voice, Our Imperial College's Jade Dragon Lake? This fish is one of the fish kings in Jade Dragon Lake. Qin Mu looked at Hu Linger, and Hu Linger nodded her head. I asked Big Dragon to catch a huge one. This one that he caught was the biggest. Wei Yong's expression turned ashen, and he saw the mulberry leaves and branches that were scattered throughout the entire courtyard. He then asked again with a trembling voice, When I came back just now, I had seen the ambition tree in Scholar's residence left with a stump. Could it be that mulberry tree is called Ambition Tree? Hu Linger said in astonishment. The tree even has a name. Wei Yong's face turned ghastly white and he walked shakily and muttered in a daze. Chopping down Ambition Tree to use it to roast the Fish King of Jade Dragon Palace. Even if I've multiple heads, it still wouldn't be enough for the Emperor to chop off. I've never been here, never been here. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 180, Wearing Tight Shoes. A fox demon and a dragon-head lion is creating havoc in Jade Dragon Lake? Not only did they bathe in the lake, they even beat you up. Gu Linwan had just returned from the palace, and the Taoist who was guarding Jade Dragon Lake came forward to complain. Gu Linwan's heart couldn't help trembling violently as he cried out. The fish king among the red dragon carps was captured away by that dragon lion? Whose fox demon and dragon lion have such huge guts? I have assumed this position for just a month and such a thing happened. Who is trying to make me wear tight shoes? Before he could digest this news, another person came to report. Grand Chancellor, The fox raised by Academician Qin of Imperial College had chopped down Ambition Tree and used it to roast the fish. That fish seems to be the Fish King of Jade Dragon Lake, which got roasted and eaten. Imperial Academician Qin and Imperial Scholar Wei Yong are packing up the fish bones now, trying to get rid of the evidence. Gu Linwan couldn't help being surprised and delighted. This brat, I was worrying that I had no method to create difficulties for him. Now it can be said that he had delivered himself to my door. This matter is enough for him to be beheaded 100 times. Now Ba Shan, that idiot, should be speechless. He went into high spirits and immediately stood up while saying, "Let's go. Follow me to arrest them. We need both material evidence and witness testimony. Just send them under escort to Temple of Justice to be interrogated by the official there, executing his whole family. We'll then send a memorial to the emperor, reporting to him about this matter. What about the scholar called Wei Yong? Arrest him as well and punish him together with Qin Mu." Gu Linwan smiled. "I was still saying who was making me wear tight shoes, but now as I see it, this pair of shoes ain't tight, but just right." Gu Linwan and the rest barged into Scholar's residence, but they didn't find Qin Mu in his courtyard. There were only a fox and a dragon Qilin who was snoring. Gu Linwan woke up this dragon Qilin and asked, "Where the brat with the surname Qin?" Dragon Qilin raised his head and took a glance at them before replying slowly. "He was still here just now. People from the palace came to invite him over. Could it be that the emperor had already known about this matter? Therefore, he had summoned him into the palace to behead him?" Gu Linwan chuckled. "This brat still has my junior protector sword. Beheading him is also letting him off lightly. What are you guys spacing out for? Arrest the fox and the dragon Qilin. I'll be entering the emperor's palace and personally see how this brat dies for myself." After he had finished saying that, he hurried away. The few chancellors that came with him and the Taoists guarding Jade Dragon Lake immediately made use of a chain to chain up this dragon Qilin. Hu Linger wanted to run away, but she was also captured. Gu Linwan rushed to the palace energetically and requested to meet the emperor. After a moment, a guard reported, "His Majesty is at Imperial Garden. May Lord Gu head over there." Gu Linwan was astonished. Beheading the Qin brat in Imperial Garden? His Majesty seems to be really angry. When he came to Imperial Garden, he heard laughter coming over and Gu Linwan was bewildered. He walked over and saw Emperor Yanfeng help Empress Dowager by the arm while a few officials followed behind them. Qin Mu was behind Empress Dowager on the left, saying something which made Empress Dowager laugh. Emperor Yanfeng saw him and waved his hand to summon him over. He then asked warmly, "Official, what are you here for?" Gu Linwan hesitated for a moment and said, "Academician Qin let a dragon Qilin jump in Jade Dragon Lake to catch the Fish King before eating it. Jade Dragon Lake is the drinking ground of the royal family and red dragon carp is an imperial cuisine of the royal family. For Academician Qin to be so impudent, this is a death crime. I don't dare to hide it, therefore, I'm here to report this to the emperor." "Something like that actually happened?" Emperor Yanfeng looked at Qin Mu and asked, "What does official Qin have to say? I'm a person outside the sphere of civilization and didn't know about the rules of the capital city. Therefore, I've been rude and impetuous." Qin Mu said, "I didn't know that Jade Dragon Lake was the property of the royal family and didn't know that I couldn't eat the fish in the lake. I'm deeply guilty and may your highness deal with me. This is a death crime." Emperor Yanfeng looked at him and said, "Even though I recognize your worth, the law is law. How do you want me to deal with you?" Gu Linwan smiled. "Your highness, according to the law, you will have to execute his whole family." Empress Dowager smiled. "Emperor, I also think the little divine physician should be beheaded." Emperor Yanfeng was slightly stunned and smiled. "Why does mother say such a thing?" Empress Dowager walked forward calmly and said leisurely, "Of course he should be beheaded. If you don't execute little divine physician, how would the world know that the emperor value a fish more than a human? If you don't execute Academician Qin, how would the world know the emperor value water more than a human? Only when you execute him, would the talents in the world know that the emperor would execute a reputable divine physician that has cured me just for a mouthful of water and a fish." Only then would they know the emperor is an incapable ruler. Emperor Yanfeng laughed out loud and waved. Lord Gu, you shouldn't bother me for such trifles. Retreat. Gu Linwan was bewildered. This? Retreat. Retreat. Emperor Yanfeng waved his hand and said, You didn't guard the Jade Dragon Lake properly, but I won't punish you for your crime. After all, you are new in Imperial College. What you have done today has already made my head ache. You actually fought with Chancellor Bashan and brought shame on me. If you had won, it's still fine, but you didn't. A Grand Chancellor can't beat a Chancellor. I lost face all because of you. You better return to reflect on yourself. Acknowledged. Gu Linwan felt grieved and was about to leave when Qin Mu said, Lord Gu, my fox and that dragon Qilin. Please don't make things difficult for them. Gu Linwan's heart leaped and heard Empress Dowager laughing. I presume he won't even dare to. That's right, Emperor. You haven't rewarded little divine physician for curing me. Mother, he's already an Imperial academician, a 6th-ranking official. I can't raise him anymore. He is still young after all. We'll talk about it after a few years, in case the officials of the Imperial Court say I favor him. Little divine physician. Tell me more about the interesting stuff when you were little. Gu Linwan walked further away and went out of the palace to return to Imperial College. He had a belly full of anger yet nowhere to vent. The Taoist that was guarding Jade Dragon Lake immediately went forward and asked, Grand Chancellor, have the thief been executed? It's all your fault for meddling. All you have to do is to look after the lake, yet you created such a ruckus, making me humiliated. Gu Linwan stared at him and shouted, Release that fox and dragon Qilin. The Taoist guarding the lake felt extremely wrong. He didn't know what he had done wrong and why Gu Linwan got so angry at him, and could only release Hu Linger and the dragon Qilin. Grand Chancellor, we had already sent men to capture Wei Yong, but Wei Yong was following Chancellor Bashan, and he didn't let us take him away. How do you think? What's Wei Yong's background? He's from Duke Wei's family. Don't look for trouble when there's none. In the Imperial Garden, Empress Dowager chatted with Qin Mu for a while more. Qin Mu then checked her pulse and wrote down a few prescriptions and said, Empress Dowager, you're recovering well. There's no hidden danger left behind. Good. Empress Dowager smiled. Thanks for the trouble, little divine physician. Qin Mu stood up to make his leave. Emperor Yanfeng smiled. Dear Minister, hold your step. There's something I want to talk to you about. Qin Mu stopped and Emperor Yanfeng walked to him while waving his hands to let the eunuch and palace maids fall back. He walked out of Imperial Garden while smiling. My Imperial academician, cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, abandoned person of great ruins, disciple of Jade Face Poison King, Minister Qin Shur has a lot of identities. Qin Mu was slightly stunned and his footsteps subconsciously slowed down. If Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor could know he was the new cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, Emperor Yanfeng naturally had his ways to know as well. Emperor Yanfeng had already walked far away, and he turned his head back to ask, Dear Minister, why are you not catching up? Qin Mu hurried to catch up and smiled. Your Majesty has a flood of good fortune that fills the heavens. Emperor Yanfeng laughed. Heavenly Devil Cult as the #1 sect of the Devil Path, the #1 sacred ground, for their cult master to be the student of the Son of Heaven. I indeed have a flood of good fortune that fills the heavens. However, it can be a fortune or it can be a calamity. Dear Minister Qin, do you think it's a fortune or it's a calamity? Qin Mu smiled. Your Majesty, if Tao Master of Tao sect yields to your Majesty, what position would your Majesty confer on him? Emperor Yanfeng said solemnly, Tao Master of Tao sect, the head of the righteous path in this world. I will confer him as upper first ranking, allowing him to be called king, inheriting the title generation after generation. Qin Mu then asked, If Rulai of Great Thunderclap Monastery yields to your Majesty, what position would your Majesty confer on him? Emperor Yanfeng said, Rulai is best in the Buddhist path, and if he is willing to become an official of the Imperial Court, I will confer him as upper first ranking, allowing him to be called primogenitor. Qin Mu said, The 3 sacred grounds of eternal peace. The Emperor will confer the sect masters of Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery as upper first ranking, calling king and becoming primogenitor. Heavenly Saint Cult is also a sacred ground, and the cult master of Heavenly Saint Cult had taken the initiative to yield, yet your majesty only confer an unpresentable 6th ranking and still ask if it is a fortune or calamity. Aren't you making the faithful officials and loyalists bitterly disappointed? Emperor Yanfeng was slightly stunned and nodded his head. What you said is reasonable. However, I can't promote you immediately, you're still too young after all. If I promote you directly, people would gossip and they would be able to guess your identity. Qin Mu agreed. Emperor Yanfeng remained silent for a moment. I know there are some grudges between you and Gu Linwan, and also know you took his junior protector's sword away. You're the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult. You need to be more magnanimous and don't always make him wear tight shoes. He is placed in Imperial College by me, and if you make him too embarrassed, it won't look good on me as well. Qin Mu felt a little wronged. Your Majesty, how would I dare to make him wear tight shoes? Emperor Yanfeng seemed to be smiling yet not smiling. Didn't you just make him wear tight shoes today? Putting him on the spot? You can be at ease. No one would dare to say they surpass Imperial Preceptor in being extremely daring. If I dare to use him, I will also dare to use you. There's no need for any suspicions in your heart. All right, you can fall back. Qin Mu walked out of the palace and felt refreshed. He let out a murky breath and completely relaxed. Since Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had known his identity, he would be slightly worried if Emperor Yanfeng didn't. Now that the Emperor and Imperial Preceptor both knew his identity, he would instead be safe and wouldn't be worried that this two big shots would lay their hands on him. Over 10 days later, Qin Mu's West House was piled up with great abundance coins exchanged using the dragon's saliva. Before Chancellor Ba Shan brought Wei Yong and Prince Minue out for experience, he went to his West House to carry away a few bags of coins. Qin Mu didn't mind at all since he was rich. During these few days, he would refine Scarlet Fire spirit pills as well as another spirit pill that could replenish spirit whenever he was free. When he refined this kind of spirit pill, he would use the hand technique of Buddhism, therefore the refined spirit pills would give off Buddha voice, which was why Qin Mu called these spirit pills as Spirit Buddha pills. He went to the warehouse to buy herbs these few days and almost bought all the dozens of herbs he needed. There was going to be a large-scale training in Imperial College recently, and scholars were chosen to go to the front lines. Directorates of each hall were to bring scholars to the front lines to quell the rebellion. Qin Mu was also picked by Gu Linwan, who said he must definitely go to the front lines because Qin Mu was a 6th-ranking Imperial academician and had almost the same treatment as the directorates. Therefore Gu Linwan also gave Qin Mu a few scholars to let him lead. These scholars were all scholars of the 5 Elements realm from scholars' residence who didn't have much battle prowess. Their cultivations were way inferior to the divine arts practitioners in divine arts residence.